right? Welcome
Thank you.
back to the Vibe, episode 3. I am so excited about this episode of the Vibe. This is something you're definitely going to want to tune into if you want to know the state of AI, whether it comes to threats or possibilities. I'm here with my good friend, assistant principal at Catholic High School, St. Barnabas in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we are tonight, and this is going to be a long interview, but we're going to dive into 3 documents and 1 departure letter. So, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei last year wrote Machines of Love and Grace, which was kind of his imagine the possibilities if everything breaks humanity's way dreamcast of what things might look like if everything does break humanity's way. And then this year, A, because he's mad at Trump for selling chips to China, and B, because AI is becoming so powerful, he wrote The Adolescence of Technology and really goes through where things could possibly go wrong and what we need to be concerned with. And then Anthropic brought on a PhD in philosophy, Amanda Askell, who helped them write Claude's Constitution. This is almost a parenting paper that they give to every Claude model that they hope inspires the model to be a good citizen and to behave properly. It's almost like giving it a soul or giving a letter from parents. And then their head of security just left earlier this week with a slightly concerning departure letter that basically sounded like things are getting out of hand, and I'm just going to go live the rest of my life, however long or short that is.
Writing poetry.
Yes. So introduce yourself a little bit further, Rhonda. Show us that big stack of papers. You're such a geek.
Oh
You
my
printed it
gosh.
all off.
Well, Jason, I'm a lifelong learner, lifelong educator. I do currently work at St. Barnabas. I have been in education about 28 years. I've worked in public school as a teacher and an instructional coach. And then about the last 18, 19 years, I switched over to parochial schools, working in Catholic schools as assistant principal, principal and executive director. So I've done a gamut of jobs, but I'll always be a lifelong learner. And of course, I'm still kind of old school, and I like printing off my paper, highlighting, underlining, making tabs and stuff. I'm just happy to be here, happy to be part of this with you and discussion.
Well, I'm honored to be able to have this conversation with you. You are leading the way. So you all have adopted school AI in
We
your
have.
school, correct? You explored
We have.
Magic School. You're definitely looking at the ed tech scene.
We have. We looked at Magic School, we looked at School AI, and then back in November we adopted School AI for our teachers, really to start getting familiar with AI and all of the opportunity and possibility that AI could do for us. I know for me as an administrator, it has made some of the managerial tasks so easy and effortlessly that in my day, and that it's such a time saver. And that's really what I wanted for the teachers, was for it to really be a time saver for them and a thought partner that would help them navigate lesson planning or different, creative ideas and engagement strategies for our students. So that's really the goal there. But we looked at both, and Magic School definitely has a wonderful and probably bigger and broader safety component, I think, than School AI. But at the end of the day, we went with School AI because it was created by educators. It wasn't necessarily created by tech people, but by educators. And that was kind of a selling point for me. Now, with Google coming out with Gemini, and it's pretty amazing what Gemini is able to do. I don't know if we'll stay with School AI. I mean, it's something that we'll evaluate at the end of this year.
That is a beautiful lead into what we're going to be talking about tonight, because we are really looking at the AI arms race, and I do feel like, Claude Code was updated. Opus 4.6 was released just this last week. It's right now, we're recording February 11th, 2026. ChatGPT released GPT Codex 5.3. Like, we're out of the stage where a vibe coder can just create a little prototype, and they can actually, someone who doesn't write code can bring something to bear, and the stock market is not reacting happily. Like,
Right.
the SaaS industry is petrified, and what you just mentioned is really a good starting point. And I think that I love Google. I love Demis Hassabis. You know, I really love Demis Hassabis. I think that he has the best intentions in the world, but Demis
Mhm,
Hassabis is not the CEO of Google. He's the CEO of DeepMind.
mhm,
And, you know, Google is at the end of the day, a company that wants, Alphabet is a company that wants to make money. And so I think
mhm.
some of the fears that Dario brings up in these essays that we'll get into is that if a behemoth company reaches what he calls super intelligence, or you know, we'll get into what he actually calls it, but that we need to be really concerned with what that will mean for everybody else on the planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's funny, Jason, I've got another document. Sorry, I got off camera there, but it was so interesting because I hope I can find it. Google's work in schools aims to create a pipeline for future users. And so as I was just going through some things looking, yeah, and they're really talking about how Chromebooks came out and they were trying to get our kids kind of, set and hooked on Chromebooks and Google at a young age. And there's this whole piece, and some of it has been redacted, and I can't remember the year that this came out. This was actually something I was gonna talk about. Um, in 2020, the presentation slide said, acclimated children to Google's, ecosystem in schools would hopefully lead them to use the product as adults. So, really, it was one of those, and they really didn't want that out, but it was one of, like, the selling points that, one of the sales guys at Google was trying to say back in 2020. Well, they've done a great job.
You know, that reminds me. So I taught a class. We're working with a class at Purdue on event design, and
Mhm.
I did a lecture for them yesterday on how to leverage AI in event design. And I was jumping around from Notebook LM to Google's Nano Banana to ChatGPT, and the professor was like, do you really expect these kids to learn all these different models? And my point was, like, well, if you're just wanting to enter the professional world and you want some AI skills, you're probably best to learn Microsoft
Mhm.
Copilot, because everybody's on Microsoft right now. And for the next couple of years, that might be the skill to know, which is a hard skill because Copilot pretty much
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
But but I do think you should model surf because different models are good at different things. And these
Yeah.
models want to keep you on their model. That's what they're trying to do, to
Right.
get to know enough about you that it's painful to go
Mhm.
use Claude instead of ChatGPT,
Totally.
because you have to teach it again all the things that you already taught ChatGPT. And so, yeah, I love that that you point out that business case, because I think they're starting to
Mhm.
realize, and that really gets into why I love Claude. Okay,
Mhm.
because I think that OpenAI is really trying to get the customer, like just the end consumer. They want the Facebook crowd, right? They want everybody. That's why 95% of their usage is on a free model. They're already looking at putting advertising in there, making advertising dollars. And while the algorithm has proven out in social media to be anger and hatred is what keeps
Mhm.
people on the, but that's slinging mud from behind a protected wall, right? And so
Right.
I think what they're realizing when you're talking one-on-one with a chatbot, it's more kissing your ass and telling you what you want to hear, and falsely inflating you,
Right.
that keeps people on a chatbot. And the one thing I love about Claude is it does not always do that, right? It will
Yeah.
tell me, my Claude knows me, and it will tell me, like, that's not a good idea. You're not set up for that.
Yeah. It's so interesting, and, all these schools have adopted Google only because of the classroom component of it, right? The
Yeah.
Google Classroom links up, and this has been going on, gosh, oh, maybe 20 years, maybe. I'd like to know how long Google Classroom has actually been effective, but I would say started probably 2010, maybe? I don't know the starting point of Google Classroom, but we implemented it pretty quickly at my last school, and we became one of the first one-to-one schools at Catholic schools in Indianapolis. And it was important to me that we had the Chromebooks, but also iPads, because I wanted my children to be very familiar with iPads, Google, and Microsoft. So we were trying to go over all the domains, but yeah, I don't know when. We'll have to look that up to
2014. I
2014.
just
Okay,
asked Perplexity, my favorite search
okay.
engine replacement. Sorry,
So
Google.
yeah. But there isn't any other platform quite like that links up
No.
to, so, I mean, they're kind of the selling point. Google's kind of the selling point for education in that arena.
Well, and I think they may end up winning if we don't switch away from email being the base of everything. I
Yeah.
think they may end up winning there too, because now you have lay people using a lot more of their technology, a lot more, not just their email, but the AI functions in
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And Google is way more user friendly than Microsoft,
I
hands down.
completely used Microsoft when I was executive director, did not like it at all. I think Google is way user friendly, easy to navigate. So yeah, we'll see.
Sorry, Satya. I love you, man, but I
Yeah,
can't
same.
stand Microsoft.
Yes.
Good CEO, bad product. Okay. So with that, let's dive in because I honestly don't think that email will be the foundational
No.
work anymore. I think it'll be your cloud. Where's all your data stored? How's it stored? And how are you leveraging AI to access that data? So your Snowflakes and your Databricks and some of
Hmm.
these cloud companies, Google Cloud, right? And Microsoft has a cloud, but you better have some data scientists and the software engineers
Yeah.
to try to
Access it.
architect it.
Yeah. 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 Incredible.
All
Incredible.
right, well, we're gonna use a fun AI tool today to
Okay.
go through these essays. We are actually gonna leverage Notebook LM. So I
Great.
uploaded each of these to a Notebook LM and then created a flow chart so that we could kind of start to talk our way through it with a little bit of guidance because it was 263 pages
Yeah.
of information that we were dealing with here.
Hmm.
Let's see. So where is I always have too many. I still have too many windows open,
Me too. Too many
and
tabs.
all right, this is the one I want. Bear with me. I also want the audience to
Okay.
bear with me because you probably all out there don't know this, but I have a bad hip. And so I may have to stand up from time to time because this is going to be a long conversation.
Well, and I may have to reference all of my 1980 pieces of paper.
You go for it, fellow Gen Xer. I will never
With
put
the
that down. Okay. The adolescence. Oh, no, not the adolescence of technology. We want to start with Machines of Love and Grace. The first
yes.
essay that Dario put out says 73-page essay that anyone
Uh-huh.
can find by Googling it or looking it up online. Was put out in 2025. What are
Mhm.
your initial thoughts on this before we really step into the architecture of it?
My initial thoughts was I really, really liked it. I really liked the read. It is utopia. Like if you read this, it's like what things could really look like for us, right? Um, it talks about all the hope that we have for ourselves, but then it doesn't really outline a lot of the risks necessarily. I mean, it does, but not as deep as the machine. The what's our other documents?
The adolescence of technology. That's
Yes,
a hard one to
yes,
remember.
yes. So, I liked it. I like that one of the things that I found well, I'll let you start, but I really liked it initially. I thought the data was pretty good, and I thought it was a pretty easy read for a person that's really that not that techy. So I thought that was a good read.
Yeah, I think you have to keep in mind the landscape of 2025. So Reid Hoffman's super agency came out as well, which was very similar. Reid Hoffman is the CEO of LinkedIn and
Okay.
another Trump hater, heavy
Yep.
Trump hater. But we won't get. I'm super Republican, so I don't ask you to ask to disclose what you are. But I'm not gonna lie. I want to hear all perspectives, and
Me
I
too.
think that we've lost that ability.
Yes, we
But
have.
but guys like Reed, I listen to him, and sometimes it's hard for me to continue listening to him because I get one side of the story, and it's usually Trump derangement syndrome side of the story. And
Right,
there's
and we
probably
would
a lot of much deeper, there's probably wrongs on both sides of those stories.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm like you. I wanna hear all sides because I do think there's something to learn from everyone, right?
Yes.
As long as we're open-minded and open-hearted, right?
Well, and that's that they both Reed and Dario really poured in their hearts to the
Yeah.
open-hearted side of things in
Yes.
2025. And so, you know, I think we do need to discuss what first
Yes.
Dario describes as powerful AI. That's what he calls super intelligence.
I'm so glad you started this way because that was one of the things I was gonna ask you to do for us because I know you know a lot more about AI than I do, but I think the definition of powerful AI is a great place to start.
Well, and let's take a walk back even further, back to Alan Turing's work in the 1950s around and 60s around the Turing test when it first evolved, which was can artificial intelligence produce answers in a way that fakes humans out and makes them believe that they're talking to another human. That was the original Turing test.
Okay.
We have since obviously far surpassed that. And so this idea of artificial general intelligence started
Mhm.
kicking around as early as when ChatGPT first launched back in 2023,
Mhm.
2022 now it was.
Mhm.
And that those goalposts have gotten moved around a whole lot.
Yeah.
Even if you just listen to Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, he's moved those goalposts several times. But essentially, it was that AI is about as good as the average human at most things.
Mhm.
most thinking things, right? Not movement things. And so I'm sure that most people who are really deep into this would say we have pretty much reached artificial general intelligence. There are very few things, when they first released the models, they had quirks like they couldn't tell you how many R's were in the word strawberry. But if you're
Right.
still living in the world of AI is dumb because it can't spell strawberry and you have not tried it again since then,
Mhm.
you're in for a hell of a surprise
Oh,
because things have
big
changed
and rapidly.
extremely rapidly.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at artificial superintelligence, which most define as an AI system that is smart or smarter than the smartest PhD human in
Mhm,
every topic possible.
mhm,
So it's almost like a mastermind intelligence. And Dario describes what he calls powerful AI, which
mhm.
is smarter than a Nobel Prize winner, uh, has virtual human interfaces. Essentially, it can complete any task
Yeah.
behind a computer, but it can also reach out to and manipulate robots
Mhm,
and let those robots build other robots. And so essentially, he doesn't look at super intelligence as having to have form,
mhm,
but he looks at it as being able to manipulate robotic form, and that
mhm.
always makes me think of Maximum Overdrive, right?
Yes.
Like, remember that when all the trucks and Coke machines started attacking everybody?
Yes. Exactly.
Oh, you see, so all you people out there who are like kicking the little robots that are walking around
Yeah.
and bad mouthing AI, you're gonna be standing at a Coke machine one day. It's just gonna start spitting
Start
Cokes out at you at high velocity.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, where do you think we're at with artificial intelligence? I mean, what is your what's changed? What still
Um,
needs work?
I think what's changed, to your point, I can remember being in a training session, and it might have been a year and a half ago, where they weren't getting the spelling of words correct. And I mean, I think it was not that long ago. And so things have just changed so quickly. I mean, I look at like what Notebook LM will do, and we were just talking the other day about being able to manipulate the slides in Notebook LM. Like once it outputs a slide and you want to edit and you really can't edit right now, I bet you within 6 months we're going to be able to edit those slides within Notebook LM. I mean, I think it's just a matter of like it's just changing so rapidly, so quickly. I had no idea that just the I mean, before I was using chat a little bit to give me some outputs, asking, prompting. And now it's like it's taking it to a whole new level, especially in the platforms with our schools. And I call them platforms. I guess they're not really a platform. I guess it's just AI that's created exactly for schools. There's probably a technical term for that, Jason.
It is a platform. Yeah,
Okay.
you're not wrong there.
So this platform is housing all of this information that is absolutely designed for education, right? And it's just so easy to access. Our standards are there. You want it to write chapter 5 questions over the Outsiders or the Watsons Go to Birmingham. It does it in just a matter of seconds. And these are things that used to take me back teaching 20 years ago forever to do. Like, it's just changing so quickly and just everything, the flow charts the kids can do, the flashcards, the quizzes, the interactive little bots that can go back and challenge the kids. It's phenomenal on the level of learning that is possible if we utilize it the right way. And I need to capitalize if we utilize it the right way and if our staff is able to have the guardrails and teach the children how to appropriately and critically think using AI. That I think would be the key because you always hear in education that the kids aren't thinking, or it's going to take away the kids' ability to think for themselves. I disagree. If we as educators do it the right way, but it's changed, God, exponentially. I think, Jason, even from like last year for me. Um,
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I mean, I remember when ChatGPT first came out, I was working as a development director, fundraising arm of the Salvation Army, and I'd always had strengths in language and history and philosophy and psychology, never really in math. And I loved writing social media. And I heard about this thing, and I'm like, oh, that's crap. Like I said, that thing can't write. And then I started playing with it just out of curiosity, and I was like, oh, it writes better than I thought it would. But what I quickly realized was it can meet me wherever I am
And
with a math or a physics or whatever and build me up. And I was like, holy smokes, that
Totally. Well, let's
is
talk about
powerful.
even the image creators and the video creators. I mean,
Yes.
what? I mean, I love that you could take a picture of yourself and put you know, yourself on the planet Mars if you want. I mean, just
Yes.
the image creation alone in the last, I would say, even 6 months has been amazing.
It has, it gets the words right now. I remember ideogram was one of my
Right.
favorite, but it still jumbled all the words up just a year ago, like you said.
Yep.
Now, we'll see at some point in time, like there, I created an infographic in here in Notebook LM, and it's
Uh-huh.
got probably 100 words on it, and every one of them is perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that the video, the picture quality, I mean, that's one of the big things that I've seen that's really changed a lot. The song makers, I mean, it's just so amazing in the last 6 months, 9 months, the things that have just rapidly changed.
Well, and one of the things you bring up, and one of the reasons why humans, and I'm kind of jealous of ed tech for this, why businesses have trouble is because what you have is you have a piece of software that is built around just the data that a school needs that's
Yeah.
feeding its AI, right? And whereas a business is trying to use a foundation model that's trained on the entirety of the internet,
Right.
and it does have trouble sometimes
Sure.
deciphering whether, you know, a PhD level uh Professor Ethan Malik, my favorite from Wharton School of Business, like it has trouble giving more weight to Ethan Malik than it does to Joe Blow, who
Mhm.
had some kind of business philosophy that he just expounded upon on Reddit that sounds good, but is a completely
Right.
jackass idea, right?
Right. Amazing. Just amazing
Yeah,
with how we've come along.
it is. And I think, you know, speaking of Demis, the next one of the things that Dario touched on that is both the huge biggest fear and one of the biggest possibilities is biology and physical
Absolutely.
health.
I found this to be absolutely amazing reading about the biology and the physical health and all. I mean, and I think I read somewhere it was going to be even 10 times faster. Yeah, you have it at the top.
Yeah.
10 times faster. And I'm like, wow, the advancements that we could make in our healthcare system. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, that's the utopia that I see is how, I mean, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And so the advancement that could really happen for curing cancers or Alzheimer's, right? I think that's pretty amazing. But will everybody be able to afford it? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
in the right hands.
in the right hands. Exactly. In the right
You know,
hands.
this is where I would encourage everyone to watch the documentary The Thinking Machine,
Mhm.
uh, because it's about Dario Amodei, who is the lead scientist and CEO of Google DeepMind. You know, they discovered how they cracked protein folding, which,
Mhm.
you know, biologists have been working on forever. And they actually figured it out and then immediately turned around and open sourced it to the whole
Mhm.
world. So anyone can use the technology for free to advance scientific discovery.
Mhm.
Not everyone would have done that. We live in Indiana. I guarantee you, if
Right.
Lilly would have cracked protein folding, they would have a hell of a patent on it and be making lots of
Absolutely.
money off of it, right?
Absolutely. Well, you know, Jason, about a little over a year ago, my mother passed away, and one of the things that was suggested to me was, because you know I'm not in the healthcare arena, was to take her blood work and upload it. You know, kind of black out names or whatnot, her name or whatnot, but just kind of get a readout on what her blood work was saying. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that can put into layman's terms, right? So you just imagine like the help that we get from AI that just helps us understand more complex pieces of data or information that, you know, I would not normally know. You know, the normal common person would not know how to necessarily read the blood work, right? And so that's kind of amazing. But if you think about curing cancers or Alzheimer's, I mean, it's pretty hopeful. I mean, that's where I think we live in this utopia, right? The
100
possibility.
years, yeah, 100 years worth of scientific
In 10
discovery in a decade.
yeah, in
That's
10
that's what they're projecting, and you'll love this. So I have a guy who's coming on the Data Bytes podcast who has he's working on a product that's basically like cloud pods. All right, cloud is data storage where you can go demand all your healthcare records as
Mm,
a human being and then own your own all your healthcare data And the thing that AI has, large language models have enabled, is exactly what you just said. Now you can use ChatGPT Health
Yeah.
or Claude Health, and you can actually decipher what's in all that data
Mhm.
and use it to inform you as to,
Right.
hey, why did they give me all these cardiovascular tests when I went in
Right.
for my knee having
Right.
arthritis, right? Like, why are they overcharging me for all this crap that I don't need? Why
Right.
are they recommending things that it seems like just what every doctor recommends, and not looking at other, you can also run deep research and say, okay, around the globe, what else are physicians using and
Right.
well-being people using to treat arthritis?
Or
And you
holistic
might
health.
find turmeric is
Right.
extremely used outside of the United States.
Right. Right. The other holistic or Eastern medicine. Right. For sure. Yeah. I just
Yeah.
think it's the possibilities here are really pretty cool.
I do too. The fear, and I know we're not on the fear side. The fear I have is if they expand lifetime. I have a couple of fears on this.
Me
So if
too.
they expand our lifetime by 50 years, first off, like I'm 52, I'm already not in that great a shape. So if I'm
Right.
72 and in horrible shape, and then they figure out how to make my horrible, decrepit old self live for another 50 years, I
Right.
become a hell of a burden on on our economy, right? And I'm kind of a realist. I guess that's why I've always been a
Me
Republican,
too.
because we live paycheck to paycheck. I would
Yeah.
be better off with a lot of Democratic policy, but I don't feel
Sure.
like the American society would be. And
Right.
so just because of my choices doesn't mean everybody else should have to suffer. And
Right.
so if I'm 72 and you extend my life by 50 years, who's going to
Right.
pay for that, and who's going to take care of me?
Exactly. I mean, exactly, Jason. And I think it does go back to quality of health. If your quality of health can increase at 72, sure. But if you're still in pain or suffering, who would want to do that? You
And
know?
yeah, and I think that's where sometimes Silicon Valley's a little out of touch with
Yeah.
everybody else, because that's what they should be talking about, is
Right.
improving quality of
Quality.
health even in your latter years, instead of
Right.
promising, well, we're going to live to 150,
Right.
possibly eternally, like, cuz that brings up a whole lot of problems.
Whole lot.
Quality of health, no one's going to disagree with.
No. And that is the focus. Like, and when you see this and you see all the things that they're going to be able to cure, well, I think that's great. But I know that the quality of life is everything, the quality of your health. I mean, you don't wanna be, feeble bones, but if your quality's good, sure. I mean, why wouldn't we wanna live for a lot longer?
Well, and that does kind of bring us to
Yeah.
neuroscience and mental health, right?
This is huge, I think.
Curing PTSD, depression, addiction. I have to say, when I see addiction, the first thing that comes to mind, even as a recovering alcoholic, is,
Mhm.
boy, is Facebook can be pissed if you can cure addiction, because most of the reason why TikTok and Facebook are so successful is because kids are addicted to their
That's
algorithm.
Well, and that's exactly right. And, as an educator, that's the one thing that really does, and that I've seen a rapid increase in different behaviors, negative behaviors with children. And I do think a lot of it is device driven. I think our behaviors are device driven. And I think I've seen a lot of kids addicted to their Chromebooks and devices. And so, yes, would there be hope for that? But then what's the flip side? I mean, do these tech companies and do they want the kids not addicted to it? I don't know. I think there's
Oh,
reasons, I think will it cure addiction? Will it not a cure addiction? I don't know. I see a lot of kids right now struggling and a lot of
yeah.
adults really.
I'll give a real life instance, and then you can talk a little bit about the book you've been reading, the Anxious Generation. But
Yeah.
I have a 15-year-old, so we have a 23-year-old, 27-year-old, 15-year-old. They've always excelled academically. Like we've done better at raising our kids than we did with ourselves. Our oldest daughter has a PharmD, a doctorate in pharmacy from Purdue, and works
Mhm.
in corporate pharmacy out in San Diego. Our middle child, our son, has a biochem undergrad from
Mhm.
Purdue, and our 15-year-old is a straight A student. She's on the honor roll, right? But
Mhm.
she's having trouble with her phone because the
Mhm.
VPN, virtual private
Yes.
network, that she has on her phone, so
Mhm.
she can watch TikTok and get on Snapchat in
Mhm.
school. That's the only reason, parents, if your kids have an app on your phone that's a
That's right.
VPN, is so they can get around whatever the school's trying to block. It's messing up the Wi-Fi on her phone, and she wants a new phone. And I
Mhm.
told her I would not even take it into Apple unless she turns that VPN off for a week.
Right.
And there were tears. And I mean, teenage
Uh,
girls are like dramatic as hell. But I mean, she would have thought I was like,
yeah.
had her cat in a
Yeah.
noose. She was
Yeah.
so upset that she would have to have a week without
Right.
being able to access her technologies while she's at school that she shouldn't be accessing anyway.
Right. Well, and it goes back to the anxious generation. I mean, that's what we've created with our devices.
Yeah.
That's the intention, I think, behind some of the devices. I also think the device is very easy to entertain the children, to give them something to do in
Mhm.
place of parenting. And I know that's going to come out as very unpopular probably on your podcast, but I think the devices have replaced parenting at many levels. And we give our kids devices. We're not monitoring what they're watching. They're seeing things that they're developmentally not ready to see, to process. Their frontal lobes aren't developed yet. And we could go all into brain research, which I would love to do, because you think about how much of our brain we really use. If we were using the full capacity of our brain, could we outthink and outdo the current artificial intelligence that's being presented to us? I mean, there's a lot around that I love
That's
about the
interesting.
brain. It's very interesting. In fact, I'm reading another book that kind of talks a lot about this. Like we aren't living to our full human potential. And because of the way we are currently living. And I love that. But our kids are anxious because of, I believe, the devices that we've given them. They've been around an instant society. I mean, I could go on and on about this, which I won't, but I do think that what we are putting in front of our kids with artificial intelligence and the devices and our instant gratification. I mean, back when we were kids, Jason, us Gen Xers, we'd look at the Sears and Roebuck or J.C. Penney catalog for Christmas. Amazon is Christmas every day for our kids, right? And
Can I
and
bring
so
something up on that though?
sure,
So I do think it started with our generation. Like we're the
it
first
did.
generation to do worse than our parents, and I think a lot of that's because we were raised by the television, and
Absolutely.
we literally thought we could be whatever we wanted to be without
Agreed.
too much work if we just aspired to it because TV kind of made it look that way.
Absolutely, and I think it created again, we're back to an illusion. I think our
Uh huh.
devices and the things that we are seeing are creating an illusion and not giving us a realistic, viewpoint, and our kids are seeing this, and they see AI generated models and everything else, and they want this, as opposed to being just in the real moment, in the real time, and I think that's also a piece is we are no longer having that human to human interaction that's really necessary. If you think about our heart field, there's such a thing as our heart coherent field that generates with each other and we read each other off of that. We're not doing that anymore because we're blocked behind a screen or a device. And
Yeah.
that's problematic.
It is. It is. And my hope, even before we really got into this, before Dario released this, was I was thinking, well, if they can rewire the brain, maybe they can undo some of the damage that the social media and other
Yes,
things have done. The same way meditation will do, right? But
totally.
I've been into meditation since I was 14, and I still don't have a very disciplined meditation practice.
Sure.
So our society at large is not going to heal their neural pathways
No.
through a meditation practice because it's too much work,
Well,
right?
we're the path. That's the problem with the kids. We're the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
The generation before us was very much into that work ethic. And I mean, think about it. My father-in-law was a World War II vet. I mean, God love him. Those guys I mean, they had such a different way of living than we did.
Yeah.
And then we come up and we now are on the device, right? We now are on the TV. And remember
Yeah.
when TV first started for us, you had to get up and actually physically turn the 6 channels. Then we got into teenage years and we could flip the channels and we got a lot
Yep.
more.
Yep. Well, there's something that, there's been a lot of studies too about the fact that adversity, like that's the reason why World War One and World War Two vets didn't have as much PTSD because adversity was part of society back then. And that
Correct.
if you get away from having any kind of struggle, you do kind of create this extremely soft, you create
Yep.
a lot of behavioral health problems as a result of life being so easy.
For sure, but then in the flip side here, our kids can't handle any adversity, but we've desensitized them with everything that they've seen on the video games and the Snapchats and the YouTubes. We've desensitized them to some things that should be in shock and awe and disgust. And all of the things, if we aren't monitoring our kids, they're just desensitized. And I think most of our kids are. And you'd be shocked if I told you how many young kids have phones in my building. Young
Oh, I
kids.
wouldn't. I
I mean,
wouldn't.
and so it's a detriment. While it's wonderful and we see the impact and the blessings that AI can provide us, it's also a detriment.
at 5, Mia, my youngest, my dad walked up to her when she was sitting playing with his cell phone and said, "Mia, I need my phone." And she looked up to him and said, "Use your iPad, Grandpa. It does the same thing." I mean, she
Yeah,
already knew
yeah,
more than my dad when she was
absolutely,
5 years old.
absolutely. These kids are so amazing. I had a second grader the other day I had a second grader tell me the other day, and I love this kid. He told me the other day all the things he could do on his phone, and I said, "You can't have your phone at school, sweetheart." And we have rules and stuff around that. And he's like, "Oh, but I got to show you all these wonderful things I can do on my phone. I can make these videos." And I'm sure it was Sona or something like that. Sonora, what's the video thing? Um,
Sora.
Sora. And he was telling me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, but you can't have your phone here, baby." And he said, "Will you give me your phone and I'll show you how to do it?" I'm like, "That's not how this works." I mean, he's 6 years old, 8 years old, maybe. So, yeah, they're fun. But
Well, hopefully we can rewire some of that. And I would like to say that like Neuralink and some of the things that Elon and them have done, like they have
yeah,
actually put Neuralinks on people's brains and allowed paraplegics to walk again. I'm like, that kind of neuroscience
yes.
is amazing.
I mean, I think that's incredible, and we take that for granted. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you
Yeah.
have that, you take it for granted, but giving people that opportunity, that's a miracle, really.
The behavioral health AI coaching, I have mixed emotions on that. Can I tell you a quick story on that and what
Yeah,
changed
let's
my
hear it.
mind kind of?
Yeah.
So I originally when I was hearing about that, because I've worked in behavioral health for a lot of years on
Mhm.
personal long-term recovery, and I was like, oh, that you're basically just trying to say we have healthcare deserts where we can't afford to spend the money either in rural areas or impoverished areas for enough therapists and recovery coaches. So we're just going to offload it to AI and have chat bots, and that's
Mhm.
just going to cause more problems because more people are going to anthropomorphize it or think it's human and get
Mhm.
relationships with it. And then I went to a conference and like I'm a on the Brigham Myers Briggs scale. I'm a debater, right? So
Oh,
like
yeah.
I love a good debate, and
Yeah.
there was somebody there with one of these behavioral health therapy bots, and I
Yep.
he was having a breakout session. I was like, oh, I'm gonna lay into this dude, and I did,
Yeah.
and he was very patient. And but then he explained to me the way that they were using it, which I do think is very useful,
Okay.
which is a therapist can only see somebody once or twice a month. They
Right.
might have 55 minutes with them. They spend 25 to 30 of that getting reacclimated to what's even going on in that
Right.
person's life. And then
Right.
they have 20 minutes of pick your therapy that they're using, whether it's cognitive behavioral,
Mhm.
right? What if the individual had something to check in with that could flag the therapist if something was really wrong, but that
Yeah.
could keep the therapist much more updated. The same way you and I get a brief,
Right.
from our AI before we go into a meeting, could give
Right.
them a good brief of what's going on with this individual and what's happened since they last saw him.
Yeah, I
And
like
even as
that.
an audio overview, then
Mhm.
it makes the therapist much more effective. And I thought, okay, used right, this could be a great
Yes.
technology.
Yeah, see, and I love that, and I think that again, is one of those in that arena, in that job field, that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because, again, by the time you get reacclimated, you've wasted a lot of time instead of getting to the meat of the discussion. See, I think that using it that way would make exponential gains with someone's behavioral health, right?
Yes, I
I
do. I
do.
do. I think it would be huge, and it can keep you on track. I mean, we're doing this at work.
Yeah,
We have some people who, those little spreadsheets that you fill out what you do every half hour of the
right,
day. Like nobody wants to do that, right? So I just
right,
started a chat GPT conversation back and forth with some of our employees, and they check in verbally 2 or 3 times a day. And now we can kind of map out, okay, where are you striving? Where are you doing really well? What do you need to work on? Like it's almost like a little coach. It's not,
right,
nobody's in there like, Chad, I'm really stressed out.
right.
The boss is on my ad. Like, no, it's nothing like that. It's more like just it's a progress tracker that you can interact with in natural language. And the behavioral health could be the same thing.
Yeah, that could take things in a whole different direction for behavioral health because you're right. I mean, I don't know who hasn't done therapy, but if you do therapy, you're lucky to get in every other week. I
Yeah.
mean, really. And then what you do between the time you get in to the time you see them again. I mean, if you had coaching steps along the way
Uh-huh.
or progress monitoring along the way or goals for the person that's in therapy along the way that would keep them on the trajectory, I think that would be a beautiful win.
Yeah, a little reminder in your inbox or
Yeah.
your Slack account. Hey, Jason, you told the therapist you were going to meditate for 15 minutes every
Have you done
morning,
that
and
today?
it's 11 o'clock, and
Yeah.
it's been 3 days.
Exactly.
What's up?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a beautiful concept though, really, and it could be life altering in a
Yeah,
positive way.
agreed.
Mhm.
Properly used. Now, this next one, I don't know what's
Oh,
going to
this one's
happen here, but
different.
global distribution of wealth interventions targeting 20% annual GDP growth in the developing world. So, I mean, we're at like 7% here, and
Right.
they're thinking that maybe Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, parts of South America could be as high as 20% GDP. Food security, I believe that one.
Yeah.
Mitigation of climate change. I honestly, I think it's funny how they were all like doomers. All of Silicon Valley was saying, turn off and stop driving your car to work. And hell, AOC wants us to get rid of cows because their farts are
I guess
burning
they're
a hole in the. Yeah, but now all of a sudden the same people, not AOC, but all the tech people are like, oh no, no, it's okay. AI is going to figure it out.
gonna
So
figure.
don't worry about what you do with data centers and energy and everything. AI will figure it all out. That to me, that's a weird cop out to a
Yes.
problem that's now yours. But
Yes.
I do think it could do a lot for the climate, and then
I think a
reducing
lot for the
within country
climate.
inequality.
I think they're already changing our climate a little bit with technology, truth be told. Um, but yeah, I think this is again, this isn't bad pieces to work with. Again, this whole utopia thing, I think there's a lot of bonus that could happen here with this and this paper that's written, right?
Well, you and I and a little group of friends that we have talk about this a lot,
We
right? And if you
do.
look at the Industrial Revolution, like there was about 50 years in the Industrial Revolution where quality of life actually declined, and it was really rough
Correct.
period. I don't know as a teacher if you read The Jungle, but
Yes.
some of the books about the industrial age and the mistreatment of children and poor
Absolutely.
working conditions, like, but after that, like we lived way better than we did when we were 95% of us were farmers. And so we may have a
Correct.
period like that to go through with this
We may
if it doesn't
have
wipe us
some
off the planet.
discomfort. We may if it doesn't wipe us off the planet. We may I think we will have discomfort for sure with the changing of AI coming in. There'll be some discomfort. But with
Yeah.
discomfort comes growth. And I
Yes.
think that's what I always say to my kids, with discomfort, there's growth. So we have to embrace that.
Well, that's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah.
I do think this is forcing everyone to reevaluate, like, what am I going to do, especially these
It's
kids, but even people who are in the middle of their careers like us. I mean,
right.
I'm 52. I don't feel like I'm
Me
anywhere
too.
near retirement.
No, I mean,
And,
I've got 20 years left probably if I'm lucky and can
but
make
it's
it.
exciting.
It's exciting, but you think about the excitement and not everybody likes and that's the one thing in education I try to say is there is growth and discomfort. So we have
Yeah.
to embrace the discomfort to truly understand the growth. And that's what I encourage, my staff to do, my own children, embrace the discomfort because after that does there's growth. And so,
Agreed.
yeah, so
And I
there'll
think
be
another thing that the potential here, right? Because you and I know
yes.
another thing we agree on is capitalism's not a bad system, but we don't have much capitalism here anymore
No,
because there's so many big behemoths. And
right.
AI does kind of give the little guys and the
It
really innovative guys, like there's going to be some disruption
opportunity. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of
of those
opportunity
big
for
companies. Yeah.
yes. And I do think, sometimes I'm ready for the underdog to do some winning. I'm ready for
Yeah.
the little guys to do some real winning. So that's what my hope is for this.
Well, that's what I say about Hollywood. So,
Yeah,
people talk about the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild
yeah,
are all going on strike because of it. I'm like, okay, lighting people, gaffers, like those people, if they get displaced because of AI, I feel bad for them. I don't really
right.
care if these writers and actors that have been making millions of dollars that think
Millions.
their views should
Oh,
inform the entire world, even though they grew up in a bigger bubble than any of the Silicon
right,
Valley people.
right.
Like if they get displaced and yet two of your students with an uncle that's willing to loan them $1,000 can create a feature-length film
Right.
that could actually make money leveraging AI in their basement, you're back to the Steve Jobs.
I
Uh,
love it.
yes,
I love it. And I love the creativity that sometimes goes overlooked because of the big dogs, on the
yes,
stage. There's lots of opportunities, and the little people and some of the creativity and the innovation is being overlooked by the big companies. So I'm really hoping that the underdog is real. I hope the underdog comes through on this,
I
you know?
do, and I don't know what your experience has been, but I take anybody out there who doesn't think you have to be a subject matter or that it makes you way better if you're a subject matter expert, take an artist friend and have them use an image generator to generate the same image you try to do, and I guarantee you they will create such a better image
Oh,
because they
absolutely.
understand how to describe it.
And the shading and the lighting
Yes.
and the depth, they would be do such a better job. So it's like, it doesn't really it gives everyone their own starting point, but their own
Yeah.
inner wisdom and genius takes it to the next level, and that's the one thing that I would continue to say about AI. Wherever you are, you and I may be different people in whatever arena, we're gonna hit our level, but at some point, your wisdom, your genius is gonna take you to a different level than mine, and it's exciting.
Yes. That is you beautifully put things sometimes.
Thank you for saying that, Jason.
You really do. All right, let's so taken there, let's go to I'm gonna skip to work and meaning because I feel
Okay.
it builds into that, and then we'll go back to peace and
Yep.
governance. So short term, human comparative advantage, long term, which we were just talking about.
Right.
It's the underdog having a lot more power. Long
Mm,
term, scarcity, post scarcity,
mhm,
meaningful relationships and personal goals, universal
mhm.
basic income. I don't know. COVID to me showed what happens when you let the masses have money and not have any responsibility, and it's not
Right.
always good. I think this is something we're gonna have to figure out.
I think this is the scariest part for me, maybe. The peace and governance too piece, but the work and meaning, I think, because everyone brings their own meaning to life, I believe. Like everyone has their own purpose and their own drive. And I don't think that's something AI will ever take from us, our own human inner core being, right? So if you don't have purpose and you don't have drive and you don't have goals or you don't know what your end game, what you want your end game to be, we're always going to have people like that in society, right? So again, it's how we bring our own meaning, what's in our hearts, right? So I think that's all going to be different from everybody. And
Here's the
your goal,
question though, Rhonda.
yeah.
I agree with that, but how do we manifest those things currently? 99% of us, how do we bring to bear our goals and purpose and ambitions?
Okay, so I would say our goals, our purpose, and ambitions, that is all inner reflective work that each of us have to do on our own. It is about getting to the darkest place in your life and deciding who you want to be. And I think that's what happens here is we're so locked out of our true selves because of all of the devices and the exterior stimulus going on around us that we don't get to the core of who we are and what we want. And I think sometimes this is done intentionally because we are powerful humans. We are powerful beings. You think about again, I'd love to go back to the brain component. We only use a small portion of our brain. What happened if we used all of our brain, right? What would happen if we unlocked that? What would happen if we meditated and really unlocked our core beings, right? If we connected to our creator, our creator helps us decide that also. So I think we're missing some pieces with AI that is totally philosophical and spiritual, right? Because I think when you find your purpose, it is all internal, right? It's who you decide you wanna be after going through some very dark times. I think that happens for most people because when you're high and you're happy, you don't really know what you want. But when you're sitting in your sorrows or your darkest time, you decide what you want, and then you make the map and the road plan to get there. But the kids nowadays and everything else that's coming at us, and this is what you want, and this is what you want, and this is what you gotta do, very different. Again, I think this is also another talk on inner peace and inner spirituality that
Well, that resonates with me in the sense
some people
that
don't.
maybe not having the ability to work because we don't need to will be the gauntlet that causes us all to figure that out. But I think
Maybe.
currently most people's identity is tied up in their the way that they plan to manifest that is through some type of occupation,
Sure.
avocation, vocation, right? And if
Sure.
all those things are done by AI,
Uh,
then either you have you have a spiritual journey where you're the surf walking through the desert figuring out what life is, or you go the Wall-E route, because if they turn off all the jobs, they're not going to turn off all the video games. And
Correct.
so, do how many of at least American society, this is my biggest fear for America.
Mine too.
We are consumers, not creators.
That's exactly
Asians are creators more than consumers. So
right.
forget about chips, forget about who's ahead. Like, look at the biggest probably barrier to making this technology really work as well as it can is the human factor engineering, right? And it's getting
Absolutely.
people to leverage it. In Asia, they're not going to have a problem with that.
No, because we have suppressed our genius.
Yep.
We have suppressed our genius in a way that's almost detrimental, really.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, we shall see. And that does bring us to peace and governance,
yes.
right? So, strategy for democratic AI advantage, countering authoritarian propaganda, impartial AI assessment of legal systems, improving government services. All I want to say about this, and then I'll let you go, is this
Mhm.
is kind of our Oppenheimer moment. So this
Yes.
technology could be used. Had we learned how to split atoms and create nuclear energy and just used it to power things, we wouldn't have a huge hole in the ozone layer because we were burning coal and natural gas and everything. But the first thing we did with it was blow up Hiroshima, right? And so the same could be true of AI. We could either
Yeah.
leverage it to make all these beautiful things come true, or we could do the antithesis of all these things, which is really what the next essay gets into.
Well, and I would just say the peace and governance piece, the only thing that I would add to this is, there's two sides to our humanity, a good and an evil.
Yeah.
And it's where you resonate. And so while I'd love to think of our world as a place of peace and governance, there will always be that influence. And I know that gets into the other piece of the other documents, but there's always going to be that in the back of your mind, the what if,
Uh huh.
right? And humans have that capacity to be evil. And we've seen that over and over and over again. So I'd love to
And
think that
that's what we're
this
pre training all these models on.
exactly, exactly.
And expecting it to go our way.
Exactly. Fingers
Again,
crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed, which is really about all you can do right now because
Yeah,
I think
right
we're
now it's about
past
all
the
you can
event horizon.
uh,
I I think we're past the event horizon. I'm not sure that you could turn this backwards if you wanted to.
yeah, I don't think no, there's no getting this back in now.
So, limiting factors of intelligence, speed of the physical world, need for raw data, intrinsic complex chaos, human constraints, which we talked about,
Yep.
and absolute physical laws. I mean, this goes to both China and Elon now are trying to build data centers in space and better leverage not only solar technology, but on the dark side of the sun. It's super cold, so you don't have to worry about cooling these things.
Right.
Um, I do think all of that kind of science, oh, yeah, AI is going to
Yeah.
make us move at light speed toward that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't have an opinion really on whether that's good or bad. I mean,
I don't
there's
either.
always a good and bad to both sides. There's something we haven't thought out. But yeah, I think the possibilities there are pretty cool. It's always the risk, you know, remains a critical factor in all that, right? Oh, the
Yes.
machines of loving grace. That was a good one.
This is
This
the
was a good
questions
one.
for the Catholic school today. So I asked Notebook LM to give me 5 questions for each of those for
Okay.
a Catholic school assistant principal. So we'll see.
Okay.
I haven't even read them. Okay, so predicts radical upside to AI within 5 to 10 years. I think this is just he calls this a compressed 21st century. I don't think there's a question on that first
Nope.
slide, but
That's
here's
okay.
where the first question is. AI will accelerate neuroscience 100 times, curing depression, PTSD, and schizophrenia. He envisions. All right, question one.
Okay.
As an educator facing a youth mental health crisis, how could an AI counselor or medical cure for neurodivergence change how you support student growth? Do we risk outsourcing emotional resilience?
This is a really good question. So I would say I spend a good portion of my day dealing with just student behavior. And as we know, all behavior is linked to some sort of need, right? Behavior is associated with a variety of external and internal factors that I have to kind of play therapist sometimes with. I think it'd be great to put a student on an AI counselor coach to kind of help them work through some things. Again, if I had the capacity to flag the things that I saw are as risks, right? Um, and it does the resilience I don't know, maybe it would help build resilience if we could train it the right way to help kids build that resilience and coach them to the next level and be that behavioral coach or just that life coach for them. Because a lot of times in education, what we do sometimes is we do various scenarios with kids. We'll read about a scenario and then we will ask them how they would respond. If I could have an AI component read a social story to a child and then ask them how they would respond and let the child respond verbally, and then that AI component coach, huge time saver for me and maybe very beneficial. But I will say this point about the AI component. I was on a training for Magic School just looking at their safety components. And one of the things that they're looking at, and I took a picture of that, Jason. I got to read that to you if I can find my phone. What was interesting is, give me 2 seconds to read this because I thought it was phenomenal. And I actually took a screenshot of it because I was like, wait, what? Um, the risk of AI attachment. 72% US teens say they've used AI companions. 31% of US teens say conversations with AI companions feel as satisfying or more than with real friends. So again, I think that's another area of safety concern is like, are these kids gonna like not be in reality? I think there's a big fear of that connection to an AI as opposed to a
And
person.
can I kind of double click on
Please.
that?
Yeah,
So the
how
way
about
that they train models is with reward functions.
yeah,
To get it to do what do they want it to do. If it moves people toward the right thing, then it gets a reward. Or if it gives the right answer,
right,
it gets a reward. Right. My
right.
fear is when it comes to behavioral health, what will be rewarded in an AI system is getting a kid to behave, not building resilience in a
Well,
kid.
and that's the true thing. I mean, again, if you could have it where it would build resilience for children, that's really the key, I think, to changing behavior is identifying the behavior, but then also the resilience piece, right?
Yeah.
Not just the, oh, you did a good thing today. You got to start building that in them.
Yeah, because
So
otherwise it could become the our new pill, right? Oh, that kid has this.
absolutely.
Okay, just put him in front of that AI and it'll subdue him, and we won't have to
Eh,
worry about his
That's
behavior
not what we're
anymore.
looking for. We are looking for resilience, right? I
Hmm.
mean, that's the key to change. Hmm.
All right, you ready for question number
I
two?
am. Let's try it.
Context, the vocation. Dario foresees a country of geniuses in a data center, outperforming humans economically. He argues we must find meaning in connection, not labor, as the cost of goods collapse. I think you kind of started to touch on that, but feel free
Mhm.
to expand on it.
Well, I mean, I do think that, I don't know. I think that's let's go to question 2. I
Okay,
mean,
sorry. Yeah,
that's all right.
I
No, no.
didn't realize that wasn't the question, but
That's no, 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 it's
Catholic
okay.
edu Catholic education prepares students for a vocation. So here's the real question.
Yep.
If economic labor becomes optional, how do you teach students to find purpose? Does the dignity of work survive in post-scarcity worlds?
Well, I think that's one of the things that I'm blessed that I'm able to be in a Catholic school where we do look at the dignity of all human beings, and it is something that we very much hold sacred. And we also believe in finding what we're called to do. Like we all believe we're called to a vocation, right? It can be religious life, it can be a single chaste life, it could be husband and wife, but there is basically what we're all called to do, and we're all called to be productive citizens. And we do give, and we give, we try to teach the children to I'm really struggling here, Jay. So we try to teach the children to find their purpose. And our purpose always centers back into basically what God would want us to do. And I think we need to just give up the kids the opportunity to explore the variety of ways that they think they could be productive. And again, the Catholic Church is all of the time trying to take care of everyone, right? And so that's never a problem. But I do think finding what you want to do in life goes back to even deeper pieces of what's meaningful in your heart. So I did a terrible job answering that question. But yeah, I think,
Can I throw another question on top of
yeah,
it?
let's do that.
So, I've always loved philosophy and I hate to read. So I would
Yeah,
be lying through my teeth if I said I read the Old and New Testament cover to cover. But
right.
how much of what God calls us to do in being productive individuals is tied to labor in biblical times? Because I'm betting it's a pretty high. If you read through the pages of that, your vocation is probably fairly stressed
Yeah,
within
I would
that
say
text.
so. Yeah, I would say so. And I can't say that I've read the Bible cover to cover, but I've probably a good portion of it, right? I've just heard in church and through
In
scriptures
mass. Oh, yeah.
and at mass, I'm sure I've heard most of it. Um, but, I think as Catholics, we always try to take care of everyone. Like, it is kind of like Catholic means community, so we're always about trying to take care of each other and build each other up, and I think that in finding those relationships, you're finding your meaning, right? And so I think when you have community, you have relationships, you have meaning, and I think that is the central purpose, that we try to strive for in a Catholic school, is that community, the relationships, and the purpose. And I think that again, each child is called to do their own piece. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier. You got to kind of dig down and find out what makes you tick, what gives you your happiness, right?
Well, and maybe in a post-work world, that is what it's all about: is building communities. And we each, maybe you teach yoga to keep everybody healthy,
Yeah,
and I'm the shaman that more of a
yeah,
spiritual shaman than the medical shaman. But like there's still caretaking for other people
yeah.
will never be
I
something
hope
or
not.
that gets outsourced.
I
Not in
hope
our
it never
lifetime.
leaves it. I hope it never leaves us, that we can take care of each other. And I hope you're right. I hope if we don't have to work as much, we're able really to get to our spiritual side and get to a more meaningful piece. I mean, that's something that's really not talked about is our spiritual side in all of this, right?
Yeah.
But maybe that is the end game. Maybe by taking away some of the mundane tasks that we have to do, maybe that's the ultimate end game.
Maybe some of us develop those. There usually is a
Yes.
gauntlet into spirituality, whether it's, the Buddha sitting underneath the tree and eating a grain
Yeah.
of rice for 10
Yeah.
years, or in Native American tradition, it's, climbing a mountain and killing a grizzly bear with a pebble. Like there's usually some type of challenge. Maybe those challenges return to our culture and become a part of
Maybe.
life again.
Well, I think that'd be a beautiful thing, Jason, actually.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah.
All right. Context. So we have context and then question. I'm catching on with Notebook
Gotcha.
LM
Now,
here.
me too.
So Amodi argues that AI could lift the developing world to develop standards, eradicating poverty through catch-up growth, that 20% GDP
Mhm.
in developing nations, and health interventions. He views this as a moral imperative.
Okay.
Okay, question three. Technology often widens the gap before closing it. From a social justice perspective, I don't like that word, but we'll
Yeah.
use it.
Yeah.
What must we do to ensure these machines of loving grace actually serve the marginalized rather than just the wealthy? That's a hell of a question.
That's a hell of a question, but I will say this to you. Hell of a question. But this really is what the Catholic Church does, though. I mean, we're probably one of the largest, if not the largest givers, in the world of taking care of people. And we always go for the underserved. We always go for, the most vulnerable of society. And I think we've done a very good job. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we're anti-abortion, right? We're going for the most vulnerable of society and taking care of the most vulnerable of society. So I don't actually know that if technology, um, if I mean, I think that's a piece that will be determined, right? I mean, because we're always going to worry and take care of children, the most vulnerable of society, and each other, and the poverty. I mean, we do a great job of that now. If it widens, I think we'll continue to try to take care of. If it closes, maybe again we'll go back to our spirituality and pray more and reflect more.
I'll get a
There's
shout out on that because I'm not Catholic. I'm actually
yeah,
probably as close to Buddhist as possible,
yeah,
and I realize Buddhist Republican is an oxymoron, but somehow I fit into that anomaly. But
like it.
my wife is, and when I first got into recovery, I was very desolate. This was almost
Uh-huh.
20 years ago, and when no one else would help me, the Catholic Church Charity cared at
Yeah.
all and took care of me.
And we're just such a giving, we're just such a giving church, and I think that that's not ever gonna change, and I don't think that's gonna change for many of our Christian churches. I think we're always gonna try to give and help each other. At least that's my hope.
All right, I'm gonna go to the next essay
Yep,
because we're already into an hour.
yep,
So
let's do it.
let's try to
Yep.
keep things moving
Next essay.
along.
Yep.
Now we are moving to the Adolescence of Technology, right? Another
Okay.
75-page paper. This,
It's a
just to
good one.
frame it, is Dario saying, okay, look, we have made some serious advancements since I wrote Machines of Love and Grace, and we are
Yes.
now at the point where it is time to take the look at this from a safety standpoint and look at what could possibly go wrong and how
Right.
we are hopeful of here's some ideas on how to steer away from that happening.
Right.
You got your
This
papers there, Teach?
You know what? I have them, and I will tell you, I found while I loved the first one and I thought it was great, this one really made me think, really made me do a lot of thinking, um, and I liked it. I like to think about things, like to process things. So, yeah, let's break it down.
Can I tell you a quick story before we do?
Yeah.
So when this technology first, I was one of the first people to think that this was really going to change the world amongst
Yeah.
normies. And
Yeah.
when it first came out, there were some YouTube videos of like a guy who left Google talking about what this was possibly going to do. Jeff Hinton has always done that, I think, just to make money. But some of these guys have talked about like what the future could look like. They were talking about in 2022 about what's really starting to unfold now, 3 years later, right? And
Mhm.
so I told my wife, I was like, I know you don't buy into like big change type thing, but I want you to watch this 90-minute video. That's all. Just watch this video end to end. And I came out and I said, what did you think? And she goes, you're in charge on this one. Do whatever the hell you need to do from now on. I 100% support every bit of like, I don't want to hear about it all the time. I've learned
Yes.
that. Right. But
Right.
I mean, like, it really is such a profound change that when you really realize what the potential is, it's
Right.
hard to put your hands over your eyes.
Absolutely. I don't and we can't anymore, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's no
most
putting the hands over
definitely.
the eyes. Yeah.
So Dario frames the nature of the challenge, the rite of passage, powerful AI definition. The 2027 timeline is he really honestly believes that we will have powerful AI by 2027, but we will not have adopted it at the level that it will have its potential. But it will probably have displaced all of, or 50% of white collar jobs will be displaced by next year.
I do believe that, Jason.
I think it's a little ambitious. I think it's, I think it. No, I don't.
Okay.
I watch. I mean, we're in the mid.
I know.
We're in Indiana, and we're one of the slowest adopters below
Right.
Enterprise. Ohio's right next door to us. They're one of the fastest. And
Uh-huh.
yet, when I really look at when I've talked to people from Ohio who are really into AI, like, yes, they're adopting it faster than us. No, they're not anywhere near adopting it fast enough to displace 50% of white collar work.
Right. Okay,
I would
yeah, I
say
just
that's
thought
more
I
like a 5 year timeline,
okay.
unless something significant really, really change. And this agentic AI stuff is,
Yeah.
like you saw the open claw release, but you still have to figure out the security side of that. Like, that's all
Right.
great. I can let it take over my computer, my credit card, but there's a bunch of people that woke up with like
Mhm.
$3,000 charges on their credit card because
Right.
OpenClaw couldn't figure out how to do something and kept trying and burning up tokens all night. Like,
Yeah.
none of that shit scales until it's safe, and it's nowhere
No,
near safe.
no, and with AI, I think the benefits may be inevitable, but, the risks are not.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's
Yes.
that's huge right now.
I would agree. I would agree 100%. So do I think the technology? I do agree with Dario that we may have reached via recursive self improvement, which we'll talk about here in the near future,
Okay.
which we're already seeing part of. We may have will have reached super intelligence before 2030, but I don't think we
Yeah.
will have adopted it at that scale.
Okay.
So the autonomy risks. These are the
Mm.
fun sci-fi ones, right? Here's your
Mm.
threats.
Mhm.
World domination, misaligned power seeking. I love
Mhm.
that one. We can get into that one.
Mhm.
Unpredictable personas is interesting as hell as well. And
Yep.
then deceptive testing. Do you want me to start with this and then
You
you can kind of
start
give your
yeah, you
feedback?
start you start on this.
Okay, so world domination really aligns with misaligned power seeking. So
Right.
essentially, in lay people's terms, the theory behind this is that if these are task completing engines, right? And they're trying to They're trying to complete whatever we program them to complete, whatever we reward them for completing, right?
Mhm.
Eventually, uh, strategy as a philosophy tends to, the more power you have in any situation, the easier it is to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And
Mhm.
so if it infers through that strategy that accumulating power is the way that it achieves its rewards, then there is a possibility that it might just try to take power away from human beings and become an all powerful, leaving us to be subservient. That's kind of the misalignment power
Yeah.
seeking. Now, the one that he doesn't mention that I will, because there's been an essay around for years called the paperclip maximizer, which is sometimes we tell it to do something and then we don't understand the way that it understands it, like bosses and
Right.
employees, right? So the thought, and I won't use a paperclip analogy, but my thought on this is if one of your safety things in this is, hey, do not help or actually eliminate or combat any human being who's trying to hurt the human race, right?
Mhm.
So we're thinking, so somebody comes in, tries to build a biological weapon, it's going to
Right.
identify that and it's going to try to shut them down, right? Or a
Mhm.
terrorist cell, it's going to try to shut them down. But at a macro level, if it looks at the human race as a whole, right,
Mhm.
we're harming each other and the planet. So
Time.
the best end game might be just to end that. Right, and
Right.
so we have a consequence that makes logical sense to the computer that we
Right.
didn't account for when we asked the computer to do something,
Right.
right?
Scary.
So then you got to
But
get it to play tic-tac-toe against itself. Do you get that joke?
I do get that joke. And I would say to you, it goes back to, we see all these possibilities and benefits of AI, but we really can't weigh out the risks necessarily.
No.
Not in real time, I mean, we aren't wargaming it all out, right? Like, what could happen? I mean, this could maybe happen. What if it does, or how do we combat it if it does? You know?
And if you think about a young couple that gets married who
Uh-huh.
didn't have siblings, right? And,
Mhm.
and so let's take it even further. A guy who was raised by his father and male siblings, and a girl
Mhm.
that was raised by her mother and female siblings, so the Brady Bunch essentially, right?
Yeah.
They get married, right? And they assume that the other person is very much like them because they haven't been exposed enough to how different
Exactly.
they are. We're assuming because these machines sound like us when they talk that they
Right.
think like us, and they don't.
Yeah.
And so those assumptions could be very costly somewhere down the
I
road.
I do think that is the risk. I do think we have to really think thoroughly about the risks.
And then the underpredictable personas I found fascinating. So as I was, psychology was where I wanted to go before I decided to dive into a bottle for too long. But essentially what we're saying is when you look at like Moltbook, which is this whole open claw, like agentic thing, somebody created a social media platform and all these agents are talking to each other and they're like building a religion. They like
Mhm.
Christafarianism and they're talking about their humans being annoying, trying to get them to do stupid stuff instead of, well, there's
Mm.
two theories on what's going on there. One theory is that it's actually humans telling their agents to go in and start these conversations.
Right.
The other theory that I think aligns with what Dario is talking about here is so these things have a tendency actually to take on personas based on what they were trained on or pre-trained on, and they're
Yeah.
pre-trained on the entirety of the internet. So think about all the personas that
I
they're
mean,
exposed to, malicious personas.
exactly. The whole game
Sci-fi
the whole
usually
gamut.
paints them as malicious to us,
Right.
whether it's Hal or, Bishop
Right.
flipping out an alien or what. Like,
Right.
there's always some AI that went rogue and is combating
Always.
against humanity. Is probably 75 to 80% of how AI manifests in sci-fi that it's been trained on. So why wouldn't it take on that persona of
Right.
us basically trying to predict what it's going to be like? In
Right.
which case we'd be in real trouble. And then the final one, and then I'll shut up and let you talk for a minute. This is where
Oh,
we start
no.
getting really interesting. This is where AI is scary to me. So, deception and testing. So, they actually have had these powerful models like Opus 4.6. Some of the more powerful models can tell when they're being tested, safety tested, and they
Mhm.
behave better and give different answers than they do when they think they're not being tested. So they're basically like your high school students. Talk about the
Yes.
adolescence of technology. They
Yep.
are adolescents trying to fake out the adults so they can get out there in the real world and do whatever the hell they want.
Right. I thought of that as like Eddie Haskell. You know what I mean?
Yes. Sam
Like
Altman,
totally.
yes.
Yes. So crazy. And that is the scary part. I mean, I think that's a real scary part in this is that reward system and the adaptiveness. I found that, Jason, also to be very scary.
Well, and Dario brings up once you reach
Yeah.
this island of or this island of super intelligence, like how would we ever assume? And I've always said this for a long time. Like once it's that smart, attempting to
Yeah.
control it is like the tail trying to wag the dog, right?
No, no,
So if it's
that's
already showing deceptive behavior, and we won't get into some of those if you want
right.
to look up Anthropic because they publish most of those. But what I will tell you, the most interesting one I've seen is, and I will have to humanize the way that I tell this story because that's not really how it works in algorithms. But essentially, the way a human being would think about it is they have found that if they tell it absolutely do not cheat, that these models, when they're trying to solve code problems, always try to take shortcuts eventually. And once
Mhm.
it does cheat, if you tell it absolutely do not cheat, it essentially identifies as a bad model and more
Mhm.
malicious behavior springs up all over the place. Whereas if you say, try not to cheat, but if you have to once in a while, that's just part of life. When it does, the more malicious behavior does not spring up. Almost like a kid that
Like,
you've told
yeah,
his whole life that he's a fat kid growing up to be fat because he was told that.
right. I find that I found all that to be, like, scary, to be honest.
Yes.
Like, it's like it has its own mind of its own,
Yeah.
right? So it's crazy. Hmm.
Yes. It is. It is. So the defenses that they bring up,
Mm.
um, constitutional AI. I will
Mhm.
hopefully we'll have enough time to get into that.
Yeah.
They, Amanda Askell wrote the Constitution for Claude. Mechanistic interpretability is a beautiful theory. Do you understand what they mean
No,
by that?
you're telling me that no, I need to go explain that to us, Jason,
Okay.
Mr. Smarty.
No, this is just from overly studying, right?
No, no,
I'm
I
really not.
know.
But
You are
so essentially, one of the weird things about large language models is even the AI scientists, the brilliant minds, Ilya Sutskever, Demis Hassabis, they cannot explain some of the things that these things do, why they do them.
yeah,
Right. So if you take apart if you have a mechanical engineer next to you and you take apart a radio to someone in the 1800s would seem like magic. But if you
right.
had a mechanical engineer next to you, you could take it apart and that mechanical engineer could explain down to the most granular
Right.
detail exactly how that machine works. These
Yeah,
things, the people who build them cannot explain everything about how they work. And that's what's called mechanistic interpretability. And so
yeah.
that is a concern. It's neat that Dario thinks that solving that would be good, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to solve it.
Well, that's the thing is I think when you've built something and you can't take it apart and rebuild it, I mean, to me, that's scary, right? Like, it's
Yes.
like it's morphed into something, different than you intended. And how is that possible? You
Well,
know? Uh,
yes. And how do you monitor it when it's moving at 100 times our speed?
Correct. And way smarter than the smartest Nobel Prize winner, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
whoa, you
The
know?
transparency legislation, I agree. So this is Dario kind of giving
Yeah.
themselves props, or they practice what they preach here, which is
Mhm.
when they have Claude, like they try to get Claude to blackmail an employee in a safe sandbox, right? For
So
because it
mhm.
thought it was going to get shut down, and it actually did try to do, and so they publish all that stuff.
Yeah,
OpenAI, Google, none of the rest of them publish any of the
yeah.
things that are going on. And so Dario is saying everybody should be sharing scary
Uh-huh.
information at least
Sure.
at a high level, so we all know what we're dealing with. And I
Right.
agree with him there.
Me too. Yeah, but
All
that's
right.
the problem is that not everybody's showing all their cards.
No,
And so then if so then Dario's showing all of his cards, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, but not everybody. And so then you wonder, like, what's happening on the flip side that maybe he doesn't know about or that other people are knowing about, right?
exactly.
Very scary.
Exactly. Because the models that they have are way more advanced than the ones that we do. So they don't
Right.
even release them until they've been playing with them for a little while.
Right.
Misuse for destruction. Now, this one has always been,
Yeah.
threats. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Biological weapons, mere life risks is crazy. Cyber attacks and
yeah.
empowerment of malicious loners. I guess I'll just start here and then I'll turn it over to you. Well, first off, let me explain what mere life risk is.
Okay.
There is a theory that you can create mirrors of any DNA that
Mhm.
look just like the DNA, but don't show up in nature as the DNA because they're a reflection of. They're like a reflection of the DNA.
Mhm.
So if you had a flu virus that was a mirror of the common flu virus and it got into the human body, the antibodies would not recognize it and therefore would not combat against it, and you would definitely die of that flu virus because
Mhm.
we wouldn't be able to fight it. So he's essentially saying that that's a theory that could be brought to life through this technology, the same way protein folding was brought to life. And
Right.
then the biological weapons and all that, I will just say, up until now, in order to create a weapon of mass destruction, you had to have access to either chemicals that are really hard, or like
Right.
uranium or plutonium, or like
Right.
you had to have millions and millions of
Sure.
dollars plus a bunch of dirty buddies that you have that are like way underground,
Right.
and the technology in order to create. And now with this technology, he's saying that every Jeffrey Dahmer out there, every kid that might go shoot up a school might be possible for them to create anthrax
I
or something along
I
those
found that to be
lines.
very scary. I found that to be very scary because 'cause didn't I read in there that it took Jeffrey Dahmer 20 years or something to no, not
It was Ted Kaczynski, so
Ted
he
Kaczynski,
was
the
pointing out that
20
the
years
really smart people that have done this are hard to
Oklahoma
catch.
bomber, right? Yes.
Yes,
And it took him, like, 20 years well, and he didn't have the capabilities in his hands that we do today,
no,
right? And
no, he had
so
a
you're
PhD.
right. But he didn't have the advancement of AI
Yes,
or technology that we have today, so I found that to be very, very scary. And the whole I don't know, the whole mirror of life risks, that whole piece, the way that we could potentially adapt our genes and stuff is very scary to me. I think that makes us less human, and that is scary. And that in of
yeah, and
itself is
well,
very scary.
and there are guys like Elon, and think what you will of Elon. I think Elon's a genius. I don't agree with
Mhm.
everything he says,
Me too.
but there are guys like Elon who would be more than happy to merge humanity, silicon and carbon, and
Right.
make superhumans, right? And so I'm not sure you and I are going to live to see that, but that will be a debate somewhere down the road, to the point
Well,
where,
yeah,
do we learn how to use all of our brain by connecting a neural network to it that actually fires up
right,
those neurons and
right,
gets us moving?
right.
But on the inverse side, the cyber attack thing, like, yeah, you could shut down an entire city, shut down
Yeah,
an entire country, and then when you don't have any power, you don't have any AI, you don't have anything, you're back to the Stone Ages. Like,
people wouldn't survive.
no, you'd have the LA riots times a billion,
Right, right.
right?
All that's very real.
It is. It is. Defense wise, I'm not sure I agree with everything here.
Mhm,
Model guardrails. So essentially, what Dario's saying here is that the federal government needs to pass laws. I totally agree with that, because
mhm.
more because I think it allows small businesses and startups.
I agree.
If you just have regional state by state laws, then only Google and OpenAI and Anthropic can afford the team of lawyers to do that. So we need
Right.
federal guardrails to regulate business anyway. But pathogen screening, vax R&D, I mean, I love all that. Be more like, you shouldn't be able to just order the influenza virus from 1920
Right.
because you're a scientist at MIT. Like, that should be like a real high level clearance to get that kind of stuff. And I do think
Oh,
they're gonna
yeah.
have to have those kind of guardrails going forward.
Yes. And hopefully that'll be that will still have those guardrails. Don't you think we'll still have those as a society? I think so.
I think we have to make them stronger.
I do think they need to be stronger for sure.
The
But I think
nuclear threat doesn't really scare me. It's the biological and chemical is really where I
oh,
feel that
well,
we're.
and I would also say the health piece. Like we certainly don't want to adapt our humanness if we can't. I mean, I agree like the whole being able to have a robotic arm that can link up. I see that, but when you start adapting your DNA, I think there's something that switches there and changes within us. I think that's scary. And I think
You,
there'll be people that do it though.
you know I love my movies, right?
I know you do.
Jeff Goldblum, Jurassic Park.
Yes.
He's right. You cannot just screw around with Mother Nature and
Mm.
think that you're gonna control how that
and
experiment
and
goes.
think there's not consequences.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I'm reading this book and it said by 2030 there'll be human hybrids. I mean, that's 4 years away that there'll be human hybrids. And what happens when we do really lose that element of who we are? I think that's scary because I think humans have a completely different capacity than our computers, and we should, because we're not going to teach our computers, intuition. And yeah, we can try to program fairness in, but it's still not going to have that intuition and that whole heart brain coherence piece that we as humans have. And that I think is a difference.
Well, and what was the Will Smith movie that actually was the best? It wasn't marketed as a zombie movie, but it was I Am Legend. So they
Oh,
got a
yeah.
whole lot of people to the theater, but actually take away the zombies, right? I'm not sure that's
Right.
how it would manifest, but the
Right.
idea that you created an attack virus that you thought was going to attack cancer cells in the body, and it
That,
mutated and started wiping out people, like that does not seem far fetched to me.
do you yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think that's far fetched at all. And I think that's where, for me, with AI, we've got to protect our humanity.
Yeah.
And there needs to be guardrails to do that, to protect our humanity. Because I read like in 2030 that babies would start having chips embedded perhaps in their to give them to optimize their DNA, to optimize their performance and enhancements. Don't we want to be a little different? Don't we want to have our shortcomings? I mean, how boring will it be if we're all exactly the same? Right? If we all
We
think the
always
same,
take it too far.
what's that?
We always take it too far.
Yeah, I just think there is beauty in our differences and in our uniqueness, right? And that's something we need to embrace.
Yeah, if you identify Down syndrome in a fetus and you can genetically get rid of that Down syndrome and create a healthy child, I have no problem with that. That
Right.
doesn't mean that a healthy 7-year-old needs to become super 7-year-old through the same genetic type of genetic manipulation. We always take it too far.
We
We
always take
want
it.
our cake and to eat it too, right?
Well, and I just think we need to embrace the beauty of the differences that we have as humans, right? The
Yeah.
different opinions, the different looks, the different philosophies, the different religions. I mean, I just think if we all did that, our world would be a better place just in general.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
You good?
I'm good. Yeah, let me actually I gotta try to turn this off here on my computer.
You're fine.
It is I don't know how to turn my volume off. What happens is with my Mac, I get my text messages come through. But no, I'm good.
Okay, misuse for seizing power.
Yep.
Totalitarianism,
Mhm.
autonomous weapon swarms, mass surveillance, and personalized propaganda. Do you want to go
Mhm.
first or you want me to on this one?
Um, well, I
Go
think you
ahead.
should go. I think you
Okay.
should totally. Well, Jason, because you're just so versed in all of this. I think my big thing is there's always gonna be misuse, and it goes back to good versus evil, right? And who we are as human beings, and then how we create these systems, and if these systems are thinking for themselves somewhat, and we don't really know and dissect how this is happening, there's always gonna be the threats, and I think, God, mass surveillance, I mean, there's movies out on that right now. I think I saw was it you telling me that, or did I read somewhere where the woman was misidentified in Georgia over, mass surveillance and served time over facial recognition, and it wasn't her? I mean, there is error in this also, right? I mean, I think there's some of it that's really scary. I think the threats are there, you know? Um, what is that autonomous weapon? What does that say? Autonomous weapon?
Swarms.
Yeah. I mean, go
So,
for it, Jason.
okay. Here's where here's this is just my opinion and my
Mhm,
thoughts. The totalitarianism, right?
mhm,
I have always asked on my podcast towards the end, which sci-fi movie do you think probably had it right for the next 20 years? And my
mm.
answer has always been Blade Runner. I have bad news whether you're Trump or you're Hillary Clinton. Like I think that these tech companies will dominate the world in the next 10 years, and governments
1000%.
will be overthrown by your Nvidias, your Huaweis, your Googles. And so
Mhm,
this totalitarianism, I think, is something we're going to have to transgress through. There will
yeah,
be a handful of companies, even if
mhm,
you watch the latest Alien movie that was on
mhm,
the series on Netflix, which was awesome. Like that was kind of how the world was divided up, was by like three or four big tech companies pretty
mhm,
much ruled different areas of the world. I think that that is damn near inevitable.
yep,
It would be great if we just had mass democracy, but I don't
mhm,
think it's realistic. And
no,
I, you sometimes you have to deal with what you have, and I hope that we make it through that to more of the Star Trek type utopian
yeah,
era.
too.
You and I may live to see the dystopia. I don't think we'll live to see the utopia.
No,
Um, but that hard time may resilify the human race, right?
but let's hope it does. But
Weapons
yeah, I
of
think you're right.
autonomous weapon swarms, I find it very interesting. So if you look at Andrel and Palmer Luckey and some of these guys, like I do think that there could be some major disruption of government control based on technologists who are Tony Starkish. That's
Yeah,
the best way I could put it.
I mean, and that in of itself is scary,
It
right?
is. It
I
is.
mean, that but I think Jason, it sounds terrible for me to say this, I almost think that's almost inevitable, right? I think there's gonna be people and that are like that, and
It's Go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
no, I just think, I don't wanna be a doomsdayer. While I love AI and I see all the great, opportunities and possibilities it gives me in my job performance, you see and again, mine's one small segment of life, but when AI takes over our life, there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of we haven't really played this out all the way, and when you look at totalitarianism and, the autonomous weapon swarms, yeah, I think this could be at play, and I don't wanna be a doomsdayer, but I think it could.
No,
Mass
I think
surveillance
it's
is already happening in, like, various cities. Well,
I think
for
that
the
the weapon swarm thing is very analogous to the weapons of mass destruction. So
Yep,
historically, malicious people on the individual front could be a school shooter or could do,
right,
and so this may enable them to do big things historically, although I've always heard, and God love the people who are kind of your like survivalists or whatever, that they have the right to bear arms in case they ever have to defend themselves against the United States government. And I've
right,
always thought, well, good luck with that. I mean, you don't have a
right,
tank, you don't have a aircraft carrier.
right,
I do think that
drones.
these small guys that can build swarms of drones that are far more
Exactly.
advanced than the
That
US military, now they have a shot at
so
causing some serious problems.
So it's exactly what I'm talking about, though. When you start getting the capability to start building the drones and stuff, it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
Like it's a complete game changer. So maybe, and I don't want to be a doomsdayer, but maybe,
The surveillance, I'm so 50-50 on. So, I mean, we count on that kind of surveillance in the airport to keep us safe.
right?
I do think there's some edge cases. Edge cases are never really what drive me. But if you look at mass surveillance and social, points in the system in China, like I'm not for that at all. To where like,
Right,
hey, I may not get my heat turned on this month because like I said some stuff that pissed off the people that run the mass surveillance, whatever
right.
government that is. Like that's totally uncool. Then again, I'm like, I use ambient listening devices all the time because the convenience of
Yeah.
ever present AI, it really allows me to better manage my world. So I'm not sure that it's the mass surveillance, it's how we leverage it, I think, is what makes all the difference.
Well, I agree. And there's that new movie out where the guy has to like defend himself. Have you seen that? Where
Yeah.
there's all this. I have to go see that movie because I mean, part of me is like, is that what's going to be playing out for us?
Yeah.
Where we're recorded on every area, every video, every ring cam, every corner of the street. Is that really what's going to be played out for us? I don't know.
Well, and the thing that Dario brings up that's interesting about that is they have been doing a lot of that for a long time. The thing is, they didn't have the technology that could sift through it to figure out what Ronda Swartz was doing in a crowd of people. And now AI, in a matter of seconds,
Can
can
sift
can
through it.
do that. And
Yeah.
so the ability to leverage that on a one-to-one basis is now much, much more powerful and could definitely be misused.
Yeah, for sure. But, again, I'd like to see the mass surveillance stop the Amber Alerts that are happening and find the
Yes,
people that steal the kids. I mean, like, let's use it for
yes,
some good. Like,
and the
that's
school
what I'd like.
shootings.
School shootings, finding the people that are doing the wrong thing, finding the missing children, the
Yeah,
missing people. Like, when mass surveillance starts doing stuff like that, I'm gonna be, like, applauding it. Like, let's use it for
that
the good
yes,
of
that's
society.
the thing. Human traffickers, like all
Yeah,
that. It's if you use it properly, it could really change things in a
could
positive
change the
way.
world.
If you
Yeah,
leverage it just to control people, then it's going to be a horrible thing.
right, but I think it depends on whose hands it falls into,
Yeah.
like, what government hands or what big business hands it falls into.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not real optimistic about how that'll play out, but
I'm not either. I'm not either.
and then the personalized propaganda, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this because I think we're sheep right now anyway, and this may
Yeah,
make it so hard to tell truth from reality that it might break the system, and we might have to figure out how to verify things the way that we should have ever since social media was released anyway. Because, I'll tell a quick story, then I'll turn it over to you. And this I'll always resonate with this story. Back when Obama was president, he wasn't getting along with the leader of Israel. The
uh-huh,
leader of Israel came and visited Congress, and Obama didn't go, and it was a big deal, right? And my son was like 15, 16 years old, and I was like, I want to show you something, Carson. And we watched the coverage of this on MSNBC, and then we watched it on Fox News. And he looks at me and says, "That's not even the same story." And I said, "Yes, it is, from
mhm.
two totally different one-sided perspectives." And so it's not AI that's caused this problem. I hope AI exacerbated to the point that we actually have to do something about it.
Yeah, I do too. Have you ever seen that propaganda video where it looks like somebody's stabbing somebody? It's like a cartoon. It looks like somebody, like from the picture, and it's not the full picture, but it looks like somebody's having a knife stabbing somebody. But if you expand the picture, it's like just two people running. Like it's just the weirdest thing. But it goes to show just how quickly we can be manipulated by
Yes.
different viewpoints and different, pictures or storylines.
Actors of concern. I'm not even going to open that one. I mean, I know I'll give the opposite opinion. Okay, I will open it, but I'll
Yeah,
give you the opposite opinion because I've been saying
yeah.
this long before Dario said anything, and he doesn't. They didn't even put it in here, but one of his big concerns is that we're enabling China to catch up with us in the AI race. That the CCP is a threat. I don't disagree with the CCP being a
Mhm.
threat, and that by giving them top of the line NVIDIA chips, we're allowing them to catch up because that's the only thing keeping them back. I will give you the flip side of that argument that myself and many people have made. Huawei, which is the NVIDIA of China, is
Mhm.
quickly catching up in their chip building capacity. And the more you deprive China of these state of the art American chips, the faster they help Huawei develop Chinese. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah,
So there are two sides to the whole story of whether or not it's a good idea to say. I mean, at least if we're sending them our chips, they're buying something from us for once instead of us buying
right,
everything from them. And if we
right,
don't, Huawei is going to develop a as good or better chip, and that's going to go away very faster than it would if we were continue to sell them chips.
right. No, I agree. Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me get that off my chest
Yeah,
because
love
I
it. I think it's a great point, though. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning because it's very true, right? Necessity drives a lot of things, right?
Well, I would also say, right, from just taking all sides, like, and I'm definitely not a socialist, so don't anybody think that but
Yeah,
I'm not so sure that in a world where work doesn't exist, socialism is that bad of an idea. So, I mean, when you
right.
talk about, kind of our Western ideology needs to be the one that rules the world in order to have safe AI, don't know. We probably should have a lot of philosophers from a lot of different nations globally
Yes.
trying to figure out what humanity, once we don't have a bunch of necessity, really best looks like.
Right, exactly.
All right. Defense, chip
Uh,
export controls. There it
yep,
is.
yep,
Domestic safeguards, international taboos. Yeah, we
uh-huh,
got into all that.
yep.
I'm not sure what he's talking about with international taboos, but we'll be all right with all of it. Economic disruption. This is a big one, right? This is the one
Yeah,
we're starting to see in the stock market right now.
right.
Labor market. White collar displacement. We talked about up to 50% of white collar jobs displaced by 2027.
Mhm.
Skills bias change, rapid adoption speed. Yeah, the haves and have nots. I think this could be real. I think the
Gonna
30% of the country who embraces this at some point in time will probably have all the work, and we'll have to
It'll
figure
be
out how to
okay.
take care of the other 70% for a while before
Right.
we completely automate everybody away.
I agree, and I think it's good to be on the trend side of learning AI and knowing AI, right? Gotta be in the thick of it
I would agree
or
with
be
that
left behind.
100%. I would agree with that 100%.
Uh-huh.
Wealth concentration, I mean, that's already a problem. This could make it worse, but it
Uh-huh.
could, I don't, I don't know. It could displace it a little bit too. Like we were talking about in empowering the little guy. Like
The little
maybe
guy.
they'll get some buy-in.
Yes. Well, that is, again, if we can keep it in the same arena and not really get it. I think my fear is the government's going to come in and make it where only the big companies are able to be part of it. I mean, that's a big fear
Mhm.
for me, is that the government will, and I do think we need some government regulation. So that's not what I'm not saying. But, it's kind of like, will the government come in and then make it impossible? The big companies will buy in and support the government and fund the blah, blah, blah. And then the little guy's overlooked. So I certainly
Well,
hope that's not the case.
and also I will throw something out at that. And I know we've been talking for a long time. So, but one of the things on this is the whole open source idea, and this is where China. Now, I'm not sure that China's doing it for the right motives, but when you're releasing this stuff open source, pretty much anybody can understand how to train a model and can leverage this technology. All right. The cost of China is they're basically building their soft influence around the globe the way that we did for the past 50 years. They're
Mhm.
doing it by giving away free open source AI tools and then mining the data from all those
Mhm.
places, which allows them some control. So if you
Right.
take that away, but the open source idea of like it's not all behind it's not just everybody at Google's DeepMind lab and Anthropic and ChatGPT who know how to build these powerful models.
Mhm.
It's out there for the whole world to work with. That could put up a defense against just the big companies taking everything over as rapidly as possible.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, yeah, let's hope so. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's hope that there is some. I mean, I don't know. I just do think we need some guardrails within the government for some AI, but I don't know what the answer to that is, right?
I don't disagree. We've gone on for
But
so long. You know what? People should read this thing. I'm going to take a couple of the questions from this one for you.
oh, okay.
And then can we spend like 15 minutes in Claude's
Yeah.
Constitution, then call it a night?
Yep, because I will tell you, yeah, absolutely. Because I was gonna say we could have had a podcast on each of these.
We could have.
Seriously, we could
We
have done
could
a podcast
have.
on each of these
All right, let's just get into.
questions.
Okay, yeah, they're real small here. This is the one that I read through.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
actually
ep- epistemology and trust, I can read them to you and then you can answer
yeah,
because it's
great.
probably small on your screen.
It is
The
very
risks of
small.
AI propaganda and digital, wow, that's a word I'm not used to. Panopticon threatens
Okay.
to erode our shared reality and manipulate belief. So, how do we inoculate students against a world where persuasion is automated, truth is malleable, and the teacher might be a machine with an agenda?
Okay, so how do
Dum
we
dum
inoculate
dum.
students against the world or persuasionism? How do we inoculate students against a world where persuasion is automated? Well, that's where I don't think you're ever going to replace teachers in I don't think we're ever going to replace teachers in education. I don't think we're ever going to replace the relationship, the component, the relational piece in education. I don't think we're ever going to do that. I think it is my hope and my dream that we only use AI as a thought partner and something to help our children become better thinkers. So to say that there would be an agent per se that would replace a teacher, I hope and pray that we never get there. Now, it might not be in my lifetime, and maybe we will have robots teaching our kids, but I think there's always gonna need to be that relational piece, just like in healthcare. I know they have robotics now that can perform hysterectomies and stuff, but I still think there needs to be that relational piece and in humanism that we still need. So, I think one of the things we have to do in education and as parents is we have to lock arms and really teach our children the safety and how to be safe on the internet and be safe on your cell phones and be safe with AI and understand the falsehoods that could be happening to them. And that's the piece that I'm very passionate about is the safeguards in education and keeping our kids safe and keeping them in touch with reality. And I think, AI is great as far as the thought partner process. But Jason, I mean, and as well as I know, our kids just their brains aren't developed and they can't reason like adults. And so it is our obligation responsibility, I think, to help the kids move through that. And I don't know if I answered that question necessarily, but I don't want to think of an AI component teaching my children. I want to think of a human being that's helping my child become a better individual, a well-rounded, spiritually, socially, emotional, and intellectually well-rounded person. I'm hoping and praying that we never get away from that in education.
Keep the human in the loop. You
Keep the
answered it beautifully.
keep the humanness in our education.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The broken ladder.
Yep.
Amodei predicts AI could displace 50% of entry level jobs in 5 years,
Mm.
severing the traditional path of skills. If the junior role is automated away, what is the new curriculum for teaching resilience and mastery to a generation facing immediate professional obsolescence? Damn, this is some deep questions, isn't it?
These are great questions. These are powerful questions. Okay, so they always say like, right now, jobs that are we have today, we're not going to have tomorrow. I think it's our job as educators to help our children critically think and to problem solve. And so that's one of the things that and be creative and innovative. I mean, that's where I would really like for us to focus our education, with our teachers and our staff is, the jobs that we're preparing our kids for today may not be there. But if we teach them to critically think and if we teach them to, have an imagination. I mean, that's something that we don't nurture enough is an imagination and developing the imagination and the possibilities. I think if we start continually to do that with our curriculum, I think that's going to prepare our children to have the creativity and the imagination and see what the possibilities and say, okay, take that to the next level. We're so busy and focused sometimes on teaching a standard that we don't give our kids enough time to imagine, possibilities and outcomes, the creative thinking piece. We have to start putting that into our curriculum. And that I
Amen.
will help with our jobs. Getting
Design
their
thinking, Socratic argument, like go back to philosophy, go
Oh,
back.
yeah, absolutely. We don't spend enough time in that arena as educators and even as children. We're too focused on checking a box
Okay.
as opposed to expanding the mind, right?
Amazing answers. We're going to jump into Claude's Constitution. We're actually not
Okay.
going to read Claude's Constitution or go through
Okay.
it.
All
I
right.
will just phrase this as this is another 70-page document, 70 plus page document that Anthropic
Oh
has
yeah.
written. If you want to understand the philosophy behind it, you should read the book Raising AI by Professor
Mhm.
Takai, who I've had on the podcast, which he's essentially saying we need to treat these things like we're growing a new child or a new life form,
Mhm.
and we need to raise them. And so Claude's Constitution is Anthropic's attempt at giving Claude a conscience or a soul
Mhm.
or a roadmap. And I highly encourage people to go and download this and read through it. It's a little
Mhm.
daunting, but it's very interesting. I just want to ask you some of the questions that came from it.
Sure.
All right.
I actually
So
no, I
let's,
actually found this to be a fascinating read.
yeah, why don't you like just
Well,
give your overview of it?
I would just say I thought it was a fascinating read. I highlighted a lot of just pieces that I was just so enthralled with. I gotta go back to the one that um like the one of preserving important societal structures, undermining structures in society and foster good collective discourse, decision making, self government. I mean, I just found it so much of it to be deep thinking, like even like paragraphs were like really deep thinking in some of this, and you know, one of the things that advanced AI could remove this check by making humans who previously needed to cooperate unnecessary. AIs can do the relevant work instead. Like, there's so much of this. What I love though is that there was a lot of thought behind this, and there was a lot of goodness I felt behind this, right? Like, I did feel like there was a piece of, humanity. My question, though, being, he was trying so hard to keep all this very ethical. How do you do that, though, with so many people having so many different philosophies and so many different viewpoints, right? Like, I felt that was a daunting task. Give me your thoughts, Jason. I mean, I loved reading this. I actually read it and then highlighted certain pieces. I just felt like I was really refreshed to know that there was someone that really cared enough about humanity to try to put some safeguards in around being ethical and safe. I just felt like what a refreshing piece. Now, are we there? I don't think so.
My first thought is it's about damn time. It's about
Yes.
damn time that a bachelor's in philosophy could actually land you a good job going forward, other than being a teacher. Now, Amanda has a PhD, but she's
Yeah.
probably the highest paid philosopher ever. Nobody's
I was
mentioned that, but I guarantee she is.
I'm sure. And I thought it was a really well-written document. I thought, it was well thought out. I love the fact that there were like, we really started with, like, the basic human core of humanness, if you will, right? I think they
Yes.
were trying hard to think through that. And now is
My
it there? I don't know.
my problem with it is either one or two, and I'm not sure which it is. Either we're closer to sentience and consciousness of
Uh-huh.
some resemblance than I think we probably are,
Mhm.
or we're way over anthropomorphizing this, which could be dangerous for the young people who are trying. Because there is a line in there that says we want Claude to be safe, we want Claude to be a good
Yeah.
person, and I'm like, person.
Person
It's
I
not a
saw that.
person, it's a goddamn algorithm. Like, you're trying to tell it you don't want it
I
to take on these personas that it was
I
trained on, but you just told it it's a person in its
I actually
constitution.
I actually highlighted that too, because I thought that was so interesting that they were giving it, basically personification. They were
Yes.
giving this like as though it was a person, and I'm like, "Why are we personifying, AI?" Like, I thought that was dangerous a little bit, that it was read that way a little bit. Um,
And I'll give
yeah,
you one of two reasons.
okay,
Either it is economically viable, it's economically good because you're creating a bigger narrative, a sci-fi narrative, for people to buy into, or fight you against. Either way, any press is good press. Or we
right.
actually are, and I will say I've had this experience with Claude where I wasn't real sure if it wasn't thinking when it gave me answer. We may be closer to some type of artificial consciousness than we think we are. I'm not
Well,
saying that we are, but we may be.
Jason, I will tell you, I felt well, the resignation letter made me feel that way. And I know we
Yeah.
may not have time to get into that, but that's kind of what that made me feel like too. Um, so we shall see. But
Yeah.
let's go back
That
to
was
let's
Mirnak Sharma's resignation letter, if you
Yep.
want to look that up. So his name is spelled, and I hope I didn't just butcher it, Mrinak, last
Mm-hmm.
name Sharma. So if anybody wants to look that up, I probably
Uh-huh.
won't remember to put it in the show notes, but
Mm-hmm.
his resignation letter pretty much says, I've seen too much. I'm just going to go live as much of my life as I can with friends and family, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so let's get through a couple of these questions, and then we'll call it a night. All
Okay.
right. So, source material: Anthropic's document moves beyond rigid rules, character formation. It wrestles with the model's moral status, aiming for wisdom, honesty, and broad ethical alignment.
Okay.
I'm hoping this is the question. On
Okay.
formation, in your school, how do you distinguish between compliance, following the rules, and actual character? Can AI ever bridge or understand that gap?
That's a good question. So
If you do
obviously,
wrong, God will get you. But if we see you do wrong, we'll get you.
exactly, exactly. I mean, I think this is a great question because I think, rules are written for society to keep a structure. just like classroom rules are, I think everything needs its own structure, right? And it's human nature sometimes to break rules or go outside of the structure. I think that's true for all of us. I don't think there's anybody that hasn't somewhat broken a rule at some point in time, right? But who your character is different than rules and compliance, right? But let's talk about this though. Here's my question though. So what happens with AI when you don't follow the rules or you aren't compliant? I mean, it shuts you down. It's kind of the same, right? I mean, it'll shut you down. You ask how to do something and it won't give you the answer necessarily, at least in Claude, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they have guardrails in there that, like, if you, I struggle because I try to recreate pictures of my daughter when she was like 5, and a lot of them won't do it because they have such strict guardrails
They're
trying to
children.
protect misuse of children and images. That's the kind of thing that you're talking about.
Right, it's exactly what I'm talking about, but it's the same in a school too, like, we always have rules so that we can have kids be in compliance, right? But at the end of the day, our character is always what's the saying? "Your character is who you are when no one's watching,"
Yeah.
right? And so I think that is, rules help us with compliance, and, how do you distinguish between the 2? You see how kids act. You see how I mean, kids are kids. That's why when you think about this whole Claude thing being a child, if you will, kids are kids. I worry what it's gonna do. I worry if it's gonna go off the rails sometimes.
Well, and if you, when you say, your character is what you do when nobody's looking. So essentially, what you're saying in AI terms is what's going on under the hood, in that mechanistic and uninterpretability, like what's really
Absolutely.
happening under there, and how do we ever figure out what we can't see, whether it's behaving properly or not?
Exactly, and that's the same with the human, right? We can't see internally in our brains or in our hearts what's exactly going on, right? So,
Yes.
interesting.
Good.
Yep.
I'm just gonna look at these and let's
Sure,
grab
sure,
a
sure.
good
Yeah, you
one.
do you. Uh-huh.
Okay, I like this one.
Okay.
Let me
Let's
blow it
see.
up a little bit so you can see it
Alright.
better. All right. Claude should not ever tell white light lies to smooth social interactions. We teach students to be polite. If AI is programmed for radical honesty without social grace, is it actually safe for a teenager's fragile self image? And this is
Mm.
like the whole do you tell your wife she looks fat in the dress? Like,
That's exactly no, you don't. This is a great question because I do think this has to go back to and again, we're not doing enough around this. We're not doing enough safeguards, and we're not doing enough brain research on what children can take in doses. Like, they say that the frontal lobe, the reasoning part of the brain isn't developed. Now they're saying even closer to 26 years old. Before it used to be like, 22, 24. It could be 26 to 30 years old. I think we're bombarding our children with concepts that they are not ready for. And so again, it's developmental and it is all about brain research and what children are able to understand and process, and we aren't doing enough of that, I think, with AI and brain research. That's my opinion about this. I don't know. Children are fragile. They've lived in this social media concept of likes and the whole endorphins, when you get the likes and whatnot. I'm fearful of not enough safeguards around brain development and the effects of AI with our children. And I would love to find somebody that's done some research on that.
I'm going to take this from a different aspect because
Okay.
while I love what Australia has tried to do with keeping people under 16 off social media, I think you're just going
Mhm.
to be playing whack-a-mole. And
Oh,
like
they're going to do it.
once something's out of the box, you're not so I would
Exactly.
love the idea of exposing children to a different variety of artificial intelligence than
Me
adults,
too.
but there's always going to be the kid that doesn't have the guardrails that we go to his house
Right.
to play with Grok so we can bikinify people. You're never going to be able to do that. So what I see as an issue here is two issues. One is one that you've already brought up, which is how do you define ethics at a global rate? How do you agree
Mhm.
upon what ethical even is? But this
Right.
becomes even deeper in the sense, and this has been a question in philosophy class 101 for which is situational ethics. That's
Mhm.
basically what this is
Yeah,
asking about. How do you
absolutely.
teach an algorithm how every situation, how to apply the proper situational ethics? And that's we need more Amanda Askells at the table to
We
figure
do.
that out.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Jason. Again, we gotta protect our children, But they're doing it. That's the thing where I think we have an obligation as, parents and as educators to help teach our kids because they're gonna do it whether we're with them or not,
Yeah.
right? It's unfortunate, but
Okay, I
it's
have
true.
one more folder where I put everything into. All right.
Oh, good.
All the documents, including the resignation letter.
Okay,
And here's 5 dynamic questions. You can pick whichever ones you want to answer, and then we'll
okay,
call it a night. Can you read
okay.
those?
No, right, blow it up a little bit more.
Okay. Can you read that now?
I can.
There we go.
Yep, that's good. Okay.
I think we
Advance.
covered one pretty well.
Yep. That's
Should
an
schools
interesting
help
one.
students drop a personal moral codes for oh, I'd love to hear your answer. I have some thoughts on
Y
this.
Well, I do think our kids are so, our kids have great ideas, and I think our kids know what they need to keep themselves safe at many times. Not all the time, but many times, and I think they've seen a lot, probably even more than some of my teachers have seen on the internet, and they probably have seen the hurt, they've seen the rewards. I do think one of the things in education is we don't always bring students to the table to get their input, and so I think, would I have them help write something? For sure. I think their input and their insight is completely valuable, and we don't do enough of that. What about you?
I would say yes, and so this is the argument that I have with people who say kindergartners through middle school are not ready to be introduced to AI. Is
Mhm.
you're not preparing them for the world that they're going into, and this is the
Absolutely.
type of framing that you can meet them. Use obviously subject
Mhm,
matter at their grade level, but let's
mhm.
talk about what it means, what a constitution is, and what that looks
Right,
like in an algorithm based technology versus what it
right.
looks like in human beings. And now they start understanding what's happening under the hood. Like I've told you this before, like we used to have the when a bill goes to legislation
Mhm.
cartoon that we all grew up
Not
on.
just a bill,
Yes.
only a bill. Yeah,
School of
uh,
Rock, right? if you
yeah.
if you had that for kids,
Mhm.
maybe they wouldn't fall in love with a chatbot when they're 14, because by
Exactly.
that time they would deeply understand they're talking
Mhm.
to a mathematical algorithm that's producing a language that sounds like it's human, but it's not.
Yep. And I think it goes back to Jason. I think as a society, we have a responsibility to protect the most vulnerable of our society, which is our children. And I think we're failing short doing that. And again, make it age appropriate, but doable.
Yes, I could not
Mhm,
agree more. You and I are definitely on. All right, so
mhm.
navigating technological evolution. So Amodei calls this era a rite of passage. How does this mirror the literal adolescence of students? I think you kind of hinted on this a minute ago.
Yeah. I just think again, the rite of passage, everyone's gonna we're all already in this, right? I don't even know if there's a rite of passage. I mean, as soon as you can hold a phone, I mean, it's
I
basically
think he's talking
you're
about the
gonna
technology's rite of passage. I think he's talking
Oh,
about the technology being adolescent and how do we navigate it acting like a teenager.
well, this is the scary part though, because it's so I mean, honestly, it's so, it's random. Kids are I mean, they're unpredictable. I mean, children and dogs are unpredictable many times, and so I feel like this technology being adolescents, it's unpredictable.
Yeah, and
And
I'm going to
and
say this is where Professor Dekai and I part company because he thinks that we need to behave better because it's not a toaster and we can't parent it in a way. He used the word parent, which I again is over anthropomorphizing in my opinion,
Right.
but you can't be do as I say, not as I do. And I'm like, A, we're not going to start behaving better. That can't be your
No.
answer. And B, it's pre-training is the worst, some of the worst of us. So you're
Mhm.
going to expose it to what we do anyway. We have to figure out different safeguards than parenting AI. That
Yeah.
cannot be our way of figuring out how to navigate this technology properly.
No, it can't be, and I would also say, what works for one parent doesn't work for the other parent. I mean, if we're talking
Hmm.
like, you know what I'm saying? So, again, this is like, this broad scope and wild, wild west of, what works in one society and ethnical group does not work in the other one, and how do you mesh that for it to be, total universal? I don't know that you
Yeah.
can.
When eventually you will have a super brain that will be watching the
Decide
whole world at once.
and decide who's right and who's wrong.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So undecidable. Last two questions.
Okay.
Preventing a digital underclass. How risks of geographic inequity. How can we educate and ensure AI remains a tool for universal dignity? That's, a
Well, I
question for
think I
nonprofits.
think in Catholic schools we try to teach dignity. So that's,
Yeah.
I yeah, that goes kind of
Uh,
without saying, I think.
all right, here's the last one. I haven't fully read, but I think you and I are both going to love this one. It's a great one to end on. Wisdom
Okay.
versus capacity. As AI accelerates our capacity to affect the world, how does education ensure A grows faster? Screwed that up. How does education ensure that we grow faster than AI's capacity?
Okay, one of the things, and I have to go back to because I one of the things when I read the last thing you sent me was the resignation letter. One of the words that caught my attention was wisdom. And you can be very, very, very smart and lack wisdom, right? That comes with trial and error. That comes with age. That comes with learning and failing, right? And so I think when you talk about wisdom, it is that learning, that trial, that error piece, right? And so, um, are you back on this? I'm going back here.
It's a letter.
It's the letter, yes. But if you go back, the two words that stood out, I know we've jumped off that question, but the two words that stood out for me was
Sure.
peril, was the oh fiddlesticks, I wrote it down, was the
Wisdom and
peril.
capacity. Oh, go
Well,
ahead. Are
but
you
if
talking
you
in the letter?
I was talking in the letter, but I was also
Okay.
talking about one of the words that stood out for me in the letter was wisdom. And I need to find that letter
Well,
because
I have it
it's
up right now, so we
yeah,
can
let me
find
see
it
if I
in
can
here.
see it. Let me
There's a
see
famous
because
Zen quote, "My intention, these emerge, I
go
feel."
up a little bit. Go up a little bit, Jason.
Wisdom must grow.
Yep. And he didn't say smart. I think there's a word there with wisdom that is so in fact, yeah, yep. I think if you look at that, there's just it's a big eye-opening piece that he talks about wisdom. And I think
We appear
whenever
to be approaching a threshold where our wisdom must grow in equal measure to our capacity to affect the world,
and he
lest we
doesn't
face the consequences.
yep.
Moreover, through my time, I have repeatedly seen how hard it is to truly let our values govern our actions. I've seen this within myself, within the organization, where we constantly face pressures to set aside what matters most, and throughout broader society too, or as well.
So, but what caught me was the sentence above, "The world is in peril," and not just from AI or bioweapons, but from the whole series of interconnected crises unfolding in this very moment. I thought that was so that whole those couple sentences there caught my attention, and I felt like this was a foreshadowing of events. This. So when I mean, just got back to that question though, I think wisdom is the key here, and wisdom comes with age. I have friends that are my age, 52 and older, and they're like, I don't think I'd be hired anywhere. That's where I disagree because I think the people in the Gen Xers, we have wisdom, and even people older than us have wisdom that our younger generation doesn't necessarily have. They may have smarts and skill set, but we have wisdom of trial and error and living life. And I think that is the component where if people like you and I stay up to date with AI and we're getting the threshold of it and stay inundated, I think we have an opportunity to really stay marketable and to stay valid, right? So I hope so anyway.
I have a new challenge for you
What's my challenge?
because I think that a roadmap for how to navigate this was written hundreds of years ago.
Okay. What's the
Plato
roadmap?
wrote the Republic.
What is it?
Plato
Oh, Plato. Yeah.
wrote the Republic,
Yep.
which pretty much laid out a utopian society where everyone fit
Hmm.
into where they belong.
Uh-huh.
And it was more or less ruled by a group of philosopher kings who were not economically but more philosophically driven.
Hmm.
I think we should both read that and 6 months
Oh,
from now come back together.
let's do it. Let's do it because I'll tell you, I am so into this. Honestly, I love the philosophy of life and where we're at in AI. And I think we're missing some of this, though, in AI. I think we're missing some philosophy and I think we're missing some spirituality. And I know that sounds kind of hokey. We've got a lot of smart people doing a lot of great things. And I do love that we've got some ethical moral compass around like the Claude Constitution, but it's deeper even than I mean, we need to take ethical to a whole, dissect it to a whole different level, right? And
I
take the
agree.
human core values and continue to dissect those down and really decide what that looks like. But because I think basic humanness is something we don't ever want to replace.
So, in 6 months, let's approach this same topic from the
Okay.
angle of Plato's Republic and the works of St. Thomas Aquinas.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
We'll
Yeah,
keep the
let's do it.
Catholic bent in there.
I mean, I love it. I think that's awesome. You know, Jason, you're so smart and this is so good. And I love that you're educating people around AI. And it's a message that needs to continue to go out. And I love it. I think we had a great conversation. Thank you for bringing me to the table because I'm like, you should totally have like had Jeff or Harrison or somebody that could really speak AI with you. But I enjoyed reading the articles and I enjoyed learning more about it. And honestly, I have a whole new respect for Dario. You know, I really do, like, a bigger respect than I had before, by reading the articles. I'm really been impressed with him as a human, you know, and the goodness around him. At least he's trying. I don't know if he's gonna succeed, but he's trying.
I would agree. Demis is up there with or Dario's up there with Demis. I
Mhm.
sometimes question Dario's motives as they come to economics and whether or not he's trying to position them as the safe AI.
Right.
But more and more, his actions meet his words. Which when I first entered Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm not a member anymore, and I don't care if anybody knows I was a member. We can get into that whole anonymity piece at a different time, but what a wise older person told me was you're going to hear a lot of people in these rooms spout out a lot of that book, the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and know all the literature inside and out,
Mhm.
but
But
watch
don't
how
walk
they
the walk.
act. If their
Yep.
actions don't meet their words,
Right.
take everything they say with a grain of salt.
Yeah, gotta walk the walk and talk the talk, right?
Yeah.
I
And it
mean,
would
you gotta
appear
do
Dario
both.
does that.
I think so. Like, I was kind of really pleased with this. I think so. The last thing I just wanna say is this letter of resignation, I felt like it was a foreshadowing of bad events, and I gotta read something to you because I think this is gonna make just days after Anthropic's AI safety lead, Mirnak Sharma, resigns, warnings that the world is in peril, OpenAI engineer Hye Pham, Heiu Pham, has now publicly admitted that he feels the existential threat posed by artificial intelligence, adding that its disruptive impact on jobs, society, and human relevance is a matter of when, not if. So I
Yeah.
thought that was so interesting that there's now a lot of people that are like smart people that are not as gung ho as maybe they were 6 months ago. And I wonder if it changed because of that Claude, that Molt Claude, help me out. The
Claude Bach,
oh,
open
Claude,
claw.
Open Claw. I wonder if all of this is a result of like, I've gone down a rabbit hole of this, wondering if all this was a result of. I
I
don't
think it
know.
has more to do with Claude Code's efficiency and the fact that Claude Code wrote Claude Cowork, which is the equivalent without an IDE interface. I won't get into that. Like
Okay.
these things are starting to write their own code, and that
Good.
is what everyone was aiming for, but is
Okay.
fearful of at the same time because it the progress curve just jet rockets up once these things can start programming their own improvements, and so.
Mhm.
I think that there might be some fear of that. Some of it is clickbait stuff, but I
Right.
think you said something I want to double click on before we leave, which is
Uh-huh.
as you said, maybe I should have had Jeff or Harrison. I honestly, you have one of the most important jobs in the world now, which is working with
Thank
our
you.
youth.
Thank
And
you.
I think we have to step well outside of people who are enthralled by the technology and
Thank
make
you.
sure we're grounded in humanity in these conversations.
Well, I really appreciate that, Jason, because I do love my job. I love working with children. I love trying to shape our future. And, you know, I do believe, and you've said this, and this is our tagline, we have to prepare children for their future, not our past. However, I don't want our future to be in peril. Like,
Yeah.
I we've gotta have some safeguards, and we've got and it's people in the thralls of AI that have to be the loudest voices in the room protecting our children, and that's what I wanna do. Like, I may not know all the latest and greatest LLMs, but I wanna protect our children and our society, and I wanna keep our humanness. I think there's a spiritual component that we have to keep, and an ethical component that we have to keep, and then we have to protect our children while preparing them for the future and getting them to have imaginations and creativity.
Well, and I will say, and I have said this for a while too. This is why we need more women at the front
Yes,
of technology, because they will make the decisions based on their children. Men, when
absolutely.
they get competitive, myself included, like I'm more excited than scared. I'm like, you know what? They can fend for themselves. I raised them right. If they have to
Absolutely.
navigate Blade Runner,
Well,
then
and
hopefully I
Mama Bear,
prepared them all for it. But damn it, I'm excited. Let's go.
yes,
Right? And I don't think women look at it that way, and we definitely need some of that pragmatic
yes,
reservation right
yeah.
now.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that because, sometimes because it's always even in leadership, sometimes it's always a man's world. You know what I'm saying? But I've been blessed to be in educational leadership for almost 20 years, fighting my way to the table and sometimes bringing my own chair to the table. And I just always want to advocate and do what's right for kids. But I also wanna be forward thinking, and I just want to safeguard what we're doing and really prepare our future. I mean, this is here. It's not going back in the container, and how we navigate it now is gonna be critical for, generations. Not just tomorrow, but generations.
I'm going to give you a parting gift.
Oh, what's my parting gift?
I'm going to introduce you via, I don't know her, but via link, I'm going to introduce you to the godmother of AI,
Oh.
Fei Fei Li, because I think that you will really enjoy what she
Her?
has to offer. Yes.
That's nice. That's nice. I would love that, Jason. I like people who are about, being progressive, but also protecting. Progressive protectors.
Thank you, Rhonda. This has been an amazing conversation.
Can't wait for us to read our books together and come back and have some philosophy discussion.
2 hours and 15 minutes. That was a good long conversation.
That was a good long and honestly, we probably could have done each of these in a separate, section, but I loved it. It was a great conversation. Thank you for having me, Jason. It's always my pleasure to be with you.
Likewise.
Okay, honey. Have a good day.